Good evening. This is the Village Council Special Public Budget Meeting. The date is February 3rd, 2025. The time is 5:07 p.m. Adequate notice of this meeting has been provided by a posting on the bulletin board in Village Hall, by mail to the Ridgewood News, the Record, and by submission to all persons entitled the same as provided by law of a schedule, including the date and time of this meeting. Roll call.
Councilmember Mortimer.
Here.
Deputy Mayor Perrin.
Here.
Councilmember Whites.
Here.
Councilmember Winograd.
Here.
Mayor Vagianos.
Here, will you all please join me in a salute to our flag? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And we will go right to public comment, seeing no one in the audience and checking to see if there's anyone online at the moment.
Dylan?
Dylan?
Nobody.
No one online, so I will close public comment, and we will go right to our agenda. Keith, take it away.
Thank you, Mayor. We have a number of departments and divisions to speak about tonight. The first portion of the meeting will be quarterbacked by Bob Rooney, our Chief Financial Officer. He'll take you through items 1 through 8, which will include the Finance Department budget, tax collector, all of our interlocal services and shared services agreements, our capital funds, our debt service, our deferred charges, our statutory expenses, and then a listing of the shared services with other municipalities and other government agencies. From there, we will have Chris Rudishauser, the head of our Public Works Department, and our village engineer come forward for items 9 through 17, which will include the Board of Adjustment, Engineering, Planning Board, Traffic and Signal, Building Maintenance, Water Pollution Control Facility, Fleet Services, Yard Waste, and the Streets Department. Then we'll have Rich Calby with Ridgewood Water, and Sean Hamlin, Division Head for Solid Waste and Recycling in, and then we'll round out the night with the Village Clerk's budget, our elections budget, the Village Manager's Office, the Village Council's budget, and the Village Attorney's budget. So that is the game plan for tonight. So without any further ado, I'll turn it over to Bob Rooney to walk you through the financial administration operating and salaries and wages budget.
Good evening. First one on the list is the Finance Department. From a salary and wage standpoint, we're up about 3.4%, basically is contractual. Walking through the other expenses, some of the significant changes you'll see is printing and binding, and that's the result of an increase in cost for tax forms and envelopes. Maintenance of other equipment is our copier lease, which the cost increases almost every year to maintain the equipment that we have. Other professional services has an increase due to our fixed asset inventory. For internal controls and for the JIF, we are required to annually take a fixed asset inventory. It exists primarily of new items that have been added, as well as tagging those that we have in place.
This is 28, right? Contractual services?
Yeah.
Or professional
028,
services?
yes.
Professional service, okay.
029, you'll see a real big change, and that is for $24,000 appropriation for penetration testing. This is an internal control process, which is probably about a year or two behind schedule. And 2 is the JIF requires that we have penetration testing.
So, Bob, I'll ask, what is penetration testing?
So it's an outside service that we bring in that takes a look at the controls over our email addresses, our server support, our wireless setups, and they basically test it to make sure that there are no problems related to security.
And why is that on your budget and not on the entire budget for the
Okay.
village?
So I put it on my budget. It had been on Dylan's budget,
Right.
but with everything that you see on his list, I said, let me bring it over to me because
Okay,
it's
but this
really
is
my
village-
call.
But this is village-wide.
This is village-wide.
And when was the last time we did this?
About 3 or 4 years ago.
And we're statutorily obligated to do it again?
Yes, we're behind.
And we
We've-
think 24,000 is going to cover it?
That's my guesstimate, yes, sir.
Okay.
And keep in mind, this is also a requirement of the Joint Insurance Fund that we're a member of. So, you know, our risk assessment is obviously higher if we're not doing this on the detailed schedule that they provide. So this actually, while you see an increase in this line item, this reduces our liability as far as our premium goes when it comes to the cybersecurity aspect of our JIF coverage.
So just another piece of this is Dylan has set up in-house training where we go into websites and learn what we should and should not do with our emails, what we should accept, what we should deny, so that we don't get compromised. So that's part of the JIF requirement as well. So there's an ongoing, the more we use IT services, the more we have to make certain that there's no issues related to security.
And it should also be noted that in the last few years, there have been municipalities and school districts within Bergen County that have been subject to cybersecurity attacks. Two such municipalities down in South Bergen, one paid almost $250,000 to retrieve their data. The other was never offered a ransom, so they never actually were able to retrieve their data again. So this is not something that, you know, has not affected communities around us, and I think that's important to note.
Wait, so Bob, I have a question. The payroll is in there, yes?
Yes.
As well. So how is that working since last year? And why do we need the additional 19 this year? Time, because I'm assuming payroll's under time and attendance on 29,
Oh,
line
I'm sorry.
24.
So time and attendance is, we just set this up last year with Prime Point to eliminate the need for paper. It's an ongoing thing. There's a lot of, how can I put it? We downloaded information which identified everybody's department, who approves it, and who blesses time off. Our first phase was to get everybody to learn to punch in and punch out. That's the hardest part of this whole thing. We're probably 95% confident that people are using it as they should. The next step, which will be sent out tomorrow, is the approval process. So people wanting to take time off, having their supervisors approve it, going through that ritual. So that will begin tomorrow. And then I would say by the end of February, we should be removing paper. We have to now update what's in Prime Point with actual, based upon what we've done since we started the system. So once we get that in, everybody will have the ability to look at their phones, to look at their computer, to see where they stand with it.
And just to give a little history on this, you know, a time and attendance management system was introduced here in Ridgewood pre-COVID. Obviously, during COVID, employees weren't coming to work. There was some remote access that was taking place with employees. Never really got back to it. When I arrived here, you know, we reprioritized this because a lot of the paper aspect of the time and attendance system is managed in my office. And quite frankly, it's not a great use of our time. We still have people on paper documenting, sending it to the office each month, each week, on a biweekly basis. That all needs to be compiled. You know, we're managing time off based on Outlook. None of it is terribly efficient. This will be a comprehensive system that will manage people when they arrive here, when they leave here, when they request a vacation day, sick day, personal day. That's all going to be encompassed in here, in addition to the approval process. So if Beth in my office asks for a week off in March, I'm going to get an email where I can either approve or deny that request based on the needs of the office during that week. It's going to make for a much more efficient system, and in the long term, we have intentions of this integrating with payroll as well, so that we make sure that our overtime is tracked in this relative
No,
to how much
I
they're
think
being
it's
paid.
awesome. I was
So
just-
it's definitely something that we need. It's going to improve efficiency significantly, and Bob's been doing a great job, you know, out of his office quarterbacking this. We have sort of used a light touch in implementing it, but we're on the road to success with this.
But that, this year will be the final light touch. It'll be like
By
this
by
year's-
July
Okay.
1st, this is going to be the only game
Great.
in town.
Great, great.
And at that point, we don't have this expense in in future years? Or is this a subscription where we have to keep paying?
This is
towards it?
subscription. We paid an initial fee last year. This is by employee. So this is like averaged to include permanent part, full-time personnel right now and part-time personnel. And in the summer, when it grows with the lifeguards and everything else, we pay per head for that. And they will also be signing in, and again, with the intention that down the road, within the next year or two, this will be part of the payroll process.
Okay.
And Bob, on the full-time salaries, I saw we were off quite a bit for what we appropriated versus what we spent. Can you give us an idea of why there was like a $20,000 difference between what we appropriated last year and what we spent? And then my second question on that is, it looked like in 2023, we spent 566. Then this year, we spent like 609, or last year, we spent 609. This year, you have us at the same. I mean, that's a pretty dramatic increase in full-time salaries. Can you give us an idea of what's going on with that line?
So I operated last year with a tax collector part of the year. I had a vacant position for the account clerk that assisted the tax collector. So there's some gaps in here. And then what we budgeted last year was based upon an estimate of what we thought we could bring someone in at. And then when we found that we had someone who was part-time that wanted to go full-time, the adjustment for the salary was higher than what we had budgeted for, about $7,000.
Okay,
Everybody good?
I am.
Let's go.
Okay. Tax collector. Let me just find it.
What tab is that? Fin TC.
Let's see. So tax collector, again, we brought on the tax collector during the year, so that was an adjustment to the salary. Again, only had him for part-time. Hold on one second, I'm sorry. I'm looking at a large screen. So that was the rationale, again, with the account clerk only having part of the year. So that accounted for the difference between this year and what we budgeted
I'm
for
sorry, can you
last
say that
year.
again? I lost you on that last piece.
So, I'm sorry, let me go back to what I initially said about the finance department. Okay, I'm sorry, I was confusing the tax collector because I look at them all together. Let's start with the tax collector and then I'll go back to finance. So the situation with the tax collector was I only had one for part-time during the year. I had a vacancy in the account clerk position, and then when we hired the individual, it was at a higher rate than what we had budgeted for. But that's the reason for the actual being lower than what we appropriated. And this year, everybody's at full boat. They all have their increases, step increases, and that's what represents the increase in that line item. And give me one sec, I'm going to go back to finance. I apologize.
And postage and express charges, that's up pretty significantly, no?
Which number, Evan? I didn't hear.
22.
22.
Where are we, tax collector? 22.
So 22 has to do with postage.
Yeah.
You know, obviously, we have all of the postage, correct me if I'm wrong, goes out of Bob's office, and we have significantly increased our communications.
Oh, I see. So when you're mailing stuff,
whether
that's
it be
not just
whether it be the
finance.
obligation, you know, obviously tax bills are the big ones.
Sure.
The budget message is a second big one. We did the communications to enhance our data collection for emails and cell phones and all that when we went through the boil water notice. You know, all of that postage gets billed to Bob's line item, regardless of which department.
So,
it
I
is.
mean, it's up pretty significantly for next year, right? I guess my question is, why do we think we're going to spend $12,000, right? You know, we spent $35,000 with all that extra stuff in 2024. Now we're saying we're going to spend closer to $50,000. That's my first question, is why do we think we're going to spend so much more money this year versus last year, given that we did so much more last year? And then secondly, is there any way legally folks can opt out of some of these mailings and, you know, join the rest of the world where you just get everything electronically?
Evan, just to be clear, it was 35 appropriated. We spent more.
No,
last
year,
it was
right? 35 actually.
29. It was 29. We spent 35.
Right.
And
It's
the
seven.
request is 47.
And I do agree we should have an opt-out.
Well, first of all, we can't do that with EDDM. So the way we send out the budget message, the way we send out the comms message, that was everyday direct mail. So it goes to every house. There's no way to opt out of that. That's just the way the post office system is set up. Tax bills, correct me if I'm wrong, this is not my wheelhouse, but we're obligated to mail the tax bill.
That's correct.
There's no ability to electronically receive your tax bill. You can go on and pay it online, and you can see it online, but it doesn't take the municipality off the hook from statutorily mailing it to the person as well. And keep in mind, there are going to be additional communications. For example, under DEP rules, and I just signed a letter this morning that's going to go out to everyone within 200 feet of Shedler, okay? Those communications are going to grow in 2025. I think we're on our second correspondence to them just this year already. So there are legal mailings that we have to do that people are not going to be able to opt out of, that we're going to be obligated to send by regular mail, as archaic as that may sound.
Yeah, no, it is okay. I mean, listen, I'll defer to you on it. It's just going from actually spending $35,800 this year to $47,500 next year. I'm going to stop because I know it's like $12,000 in a $60 million budget, but that did strike me as a bit much.
So in the last 6 months, we've averaged about $4,000 a month. So if you annualize that, you're up to the $48,000.
I mean, listen, we can look at cutting back that line, and if it exceeds, we'll have to look at doing transfers later on in the year.
I mean, is there any way we could start with one thing, like the calendar to opt out? I know 2 people in town who would, I mean, could we pilot something that is optional to opt out of?
To do the opt-out, you'd have to individually address the mailing, which is going to cost
Which is
you
what-
more, which is going to
got it,
cost you
got it,
more
got it.
than the bulk mailing every
Right,
day.
got it,
So you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't. And I don't know what that math looks like, but I can tell you that on the back of the napkin, it's less expensive to send it to every door.
Got
I
it.
think the only way out of this is to contact our legislative team and ask them to work on legislation that would allow all municipalities to provide an opt-out for tax bills and other required mailings. So, put it on the list.
But in the meantime, we'll take a look at 022, and we'll see if we can sharpen our pencil on that.
Okay.
Are we good?
Good? Next.
Statutory expenditures?
So is this is interlocals inter?
No, statutory expenditures.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh,
It's okay.
number 7.
Oh, we're skipping ahead?
Yep, apparently
Okay.
so. And that is under, looking,
Deferred charges.
What is that under?
Def C is an abbreviation for deferred charges, so we're going to jump to that next, which would be number 6. So we're going to jump around between 3 and 8, but let's start
Let's
with
do deferred charges, just to,
We're doing deferred
So-
charges before we're not doing statutory expenses.
we'll do deferred charges first.
Good.
We're going to come back.
We'll go alphabetically. So in deferred charges for '25, we have a requirement to raise $250,000 for the emergency appropriation that we did this year for fire salaries and wages. Then we have 1/5 of the special emergency that was created back in 2023 for the COVID emergency. This will expire in 2026.
So
And
this is the last year, or we have one more year?
we have one more year after
Right,
this.
so this year and next year for the 267.
Correct. And then that finishes the special emergency, and then we have $5,000, which we put in against capital ordinances to fund them annually. Questions?
Yeah. What is this?
So these are charges that are taken on in a year relative to fire S&W. That was last year because we had all the people out, like John
Fire
spoke.
S&W,
Fire salaries and wages.
okay?
We were short because we incurred so much overtime, because we had
Right, I
people out on
understand.
workman's comp, we had people
So
out
we're
on
paying
personal
for-
injury.
We're paying for last year this year.
Correct.
That, now I understand.
Now, the special emergency, when
Okay.
you do a special emergency under the statute, you have 5 years to pay that back.
Oh, I
So
see.
this was 2023, I think it was before I
Well,
got
it
here.
was 2020 was a COVID and a revenue deficit.
So this
that-
is the same kind of charges related to COVID that we have 5 years to pay back, and this is the 5th year.
However,
This is-
there's a criteria for a special emergency, which you can spread out over 5 years.
Right.
The S&W from fire last year didn't
I-
apply to that, so you have to make that up
I
this
now
year.
completely understand.
Got it.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
Okay? Good?
Any questions about those?
No.
Okay.
Next.
All right. Statutory expenditures.
Statutory expenses.
Is this in the same tab?
No.
Yes, it is. Next page.
Ah, yes, thank you.
A different one.
Remind us what statutory expenditures are?
Go ahead, Bob.
So statutory expenditures are, fall into the category of unemployment insurance, Social Security coverage, pension payments. They're required by law. Most of them are uncontrollable. It's whatever we get billed for from pensions and health care and things of that nature. A couple of these we budget internally to account for accumulated leave for termination pay or for salary and salary negotiation costs, which when we enter into non-union and directors' annual salaries. So we budget money to put into the reserves so that after they're negotiated and paid out, they get charged against these reserves. So for terminal leave, last year we had $75,000. The target to replenish that account this year is $100,000. Again, trying to maintain something that won't impact future years' budgets. The same thing for salary negotiation costs. We budgeted 152 last year. I'm looking for 175 this year. I'll know better in the next, I'm going to say, month as to what our termination payouts or if there's any changes to salary negotiation numbers that are fine-tuned. So that number has some flexibility to it. As we get down to Social Security, unemployment insurance, again, these are amounts, Medicare Part B, these are amounts that I have no control over.
Why do they change so dramatically year to year? I mean, our overall, number of employees has stayed relatively static. Why is these fees changing so much?
So some of this, for Medicare, for example, you're always like a year behind. So
Mhm.
whatever statutorily the government comes up with premium payments,
Mm-hmm.
you're being affected this year for what
So
they
these are
adjust.
just statutory changes that we have to pay more just because
Correct.
And what are OE budget credits?
So these are credits that get moved to other departments. So for example, I account for all my Social Security here, and then Water Department, I charge them, so I credit this.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, throughout the entire budget document, wherever you see OE budget credits, means he's charging another source. Most cases, it's water, because they have a standalone budget
Mhm.
for things that affect their population of employees, but just bear in mind that that is being charged against another account.
So then, Public Employee Retirement System and Consolidated Police and Fire, again, are all statutory, and Police and Fire Retirement System are all statutory. So there's not much I can do with those.
Everybody good? Let's go.
Okay, then we're into, what's that?
I'm
What are we
sorry.
on?
Shared services? And that's the handout?
No, debt service, I'm sorry.
Oh,
What?
debt
Debt
service.
services, number
Okay.
5.
Right.
What are we doing? Debt services, number 5.
Gotta find it.
This is under debt?
Debt, I'm gonna guess.
Yes.
Was this at the end?
It was just before
Oh, I see, yeah.
finance.
Debt.
2 tabs.
We good?
Yep.
All right, so for general obligation principal, we're up slightly over last year, but the general obligation interest is down. So it's roughly a 7% decrease from last year. Bond anticipation notes, we anticipate, or we'd like to pay down $100,000 of notes, and our interest on notes is flat to last year. So total debt service is down roughly 6% for this
So
year.
just to show you, I ask questions even when I'm not complaining.
It's okay.
Why is it down, and what is our overall amount of debt we're currently carrying?
That I'll get to you by the end of the meeting tonight.
Okay.
the reason it's down is the interest rates on the short-term debt is down based upon the rates that we got. We had
Bond
two sales last year, two note
Mhm.
sales, January and October, and the rates are favorable to what we carried from the previous
Because
year.
interest rates are going down and we have that AAA bond rating, right? That was a
That's
softball
why
bond.
those rates go down for us.
Right.
Again, it's all based upon the market,
Mhm.
but we are at the ones that share the best rates. As far as the principal, depends on the age of maturities. So it's up a little this year, but the interest rates that go with it, they start to fade away and become more favorable to whatever we sold them for.
Great.
So, Bob, can I ask just a general question? Because it's the 20th year of Habernickel. Is that included as an open bond here? I mean, when you talk about the bonds, is that just going to disappear once it's paid off from the budget?
So you don't, it's not issued for a specific project, it's usually issued for a group of projects.
Mhm.
So if Shedler is funded.
Habernickel.
I'm sorry, Habernickel, if it was in there for short-term financing, for example,
Mhm.
and we're in our third year, most likely it's in a bond.
Okay.
We bonded it, but I'll get you that information as well, just to let you know where that is.
Because it is 20 years, I'm just assuming, and that was a pretty, what was it, 10 million?
Something like that. But I thought we paid it off in 2024.
So if you're in a different zone here, so if you're talking about what was funded through open space, is that where you are?
I'm assuming, I don't think
I
we
was the-
had, I don't think we had $10 million, and I don't know what the structure of the 2004
Okay.
deal was.
I'll clear it up for you by the
Okay.
end of the night.
Because
okay.
it's just been 20 years.
Okay. I'll share with you what I.
And I only know that because Liam's 20 years.
There you go.
There you go.
You got something to gauge it against.
Yes.
Any other questions on debt service?
Yep.
Good.
Okay, let's go.
I just have three other items there. So you have capital improvement fund, which is the 5% down payment required on any new bond ordinances we have for the year. So I kept it flat to last year. And then we have the contribution to joint meeting, which is an annual assessment that we get from Consolidated Dispatch. Okay, we good?
Yep.
Good.
All right. Last is the shared services. So I handed out, or left in front of you,
Just out of curiosity, interlocal services? Did we cover?
same
that?
as shared services.
Okay.
It's one in this, I use it.
Sorry, and do we do capital funds, or is that still coming?
Capital Improvement Fund
He just
is
did
what
it.
we're covering
Oh, that was just, we
tonight.
just covered?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
It was a quickie.
So the shared service agreements show whether we are the lead or we are the recipient. I listed all the ones that I was aware of for the last 3 years. On the right side, it shows what either we are receiving or paying for that service. And then there are a couple of open items which are based upon signed agreements, which I may not have a copy of, but I will certainly update this when I do, which would be the to be determined.
So it looks like we're paying, this is an expense, everything in the far right corner, right?
So, no, if
Okay.
we are the recipient, then
Oh, I
we
see, I
are
see.
paying out. If we are the lead,
We're receiving
we're
it.
receiving.
Gotcha.
And just because people can't, and we have 2 new potentials coming in this year, right? You have Norwood.
Yes.
And recycling with more styrofoam, which is good. I think this is a great document. I'd love to see it at 2 pages.
Keep in mind, too, on Wednesday nights, at Wednesday night's work session, you're going to consider a shared service with Ohokis for some services from Signal. So if you've,
That's great.
when you look at your packet, you'll see that, we're growing this. We grow it slowly. While shared service is important, you need to be able to deliver, or the lead agency needs to be able to deliver. And you need to have a level of confidence that that's going to work before you enter into it. But we'll talk more about the services we're going to be able to provide from the traffic signal division to Hohokus Wednesday night.
Good.
Great, would love to, I agree with Siobhan, I'd love to see the 2 pages next year. This is
Yep.
great.
And no changing the font.
That's it for me. Got any other questions?
I think you got off easy, Bob.
Got a few
So
things
far.
going on.
Yeah, Evan's just getting warmed up.
Thank you, Bob. Thank you, Olivia.
Thank you, guys.
I just want to thank you guys because it's a lot of work. And I know the email thing made it super hard, and this is great. The presentation so far has been great.
Thanks. IT is great when it works.
You know, I say that all the time. Technology is terrific. when it-
And one of the things about Ridgewood, which, when I first came here, I was fascinated with the amount of IT that was available. And as it grows and grows and grows, we are so far ahead of other municipalities, it's unbelievable.
Really?
Yes, yes. You take away the big cities, like the Jersey City and the Hoboken, come down to our size, and they just don't have the same.
All good.
Thank you.
Where's ZBA?
Well, I think it doesn't matter because we're still waiting for the director to come in on that.
Oh,
one. So I think
okay,
we're going to,
fine.
why don't we take a break until he walks in?
Great.
Which could be any moment.
Do you know what this is under, the zoning? Tell us for a second.
So we're going to go with Sean's stuff first?
So Mayor, engineering is actually waiting for a few division heads to arrive because we're running slightly ahead of schedule. So with the council's indulgence, we're going to have Sean present sanitation and recycling prior to engineering
Good.
and public works arriving, if that's okay.
Excellent. Welcome, Sean.
Sean, you have a preference as to which topic you speak to first?
Welcome. No, not really.
Okay. All right, let's do sanitation first. How's that?
Okay. We starting with operating?
Yes.
Okay. Come on.
It's here. Look, this is about how
Yes,
much
this
left
is solid waste.
at the bottom. It says sanitation.
We'll give Rich a second to open up his laptop since we threw him right into the frying pan here.
Yes, but it's under sanitation. And then recycling is Sanit-R. Yep.
Yeah, so the first tab will be solid waste operating budget, and then we'll talk about capital. Then we'll go to recycling operating, and then we'll go to capital on that. Fair enough?
Sounds good.
All right.
Let's go.
All right, Sean, feel free.
All right. So for solid waste, I know our number's going up this year based on the fact that we signed a new contract with IWS. Our disposal fees went up, so you're going to see a pretty steep jump there. That was unavoidable.
That was for disposal.
Disposal, yes. And yes, the bottom number in yellow, the 188,971. That's what it's anticipated
I see.
to jump.
Where's
Well,
that
that's-
reflected? I'm having trouble seeing that above this. Because your salary and wages look pretty flat, right?
Yeah.
Then your other expenses
And then we've
also
got-
look,
Oh, I'm
Great.
sorry. The vehicle rental is where we're up, the 87,600. That's why it.
That's what I was waiting for.
Yeah.
yeah.
So the vehicle rental, we're working hard to get that done, hopefully as soon as possible. I put in the resolutions for them to purchase them, hopefully in April. We'll get to that in capital later, but that's what the funds that'll be needed to, if we don't solve the budget before May, that's the number we'll need to pay for the rentals through May.
So just to bring the council up to speed, I've asked Bob to work with Heather and our bond counsel to prepare a capital bond ordinance to introduce early, which is what we did last year. And it would be for the same two areas that we did last year, which would be the road resurfacing, so that way we can authorize Chris to start to prepare the bid for 2025, and when the weather breaks, he can get into the ground. We would also be introducing the ordinance that we need to purchase the 2 rental vehicles. So that would be the second part of the ordinance. So I anticipate that we'll be talking about this at our next meeting. And then, we'll be able to move forward with the introduction and the adoption. But that will come before the remaining capital items, which will be introduced and adopted in sync with introducing and adopting the budget. Roughly, it's going to be $2,250,000 on the paving. And while we're in the process of refining a number because we're applying some old capital, it should be somewhere around 500 to 550 on the purchase of the vehicles. Give or take, don't hold me to them, because again, we're going to try to apply some old capital if it's available so that we can pare down these numbers and we're not taking on new debt.
No, because I'm still trying to figure this out.
Yeah, it's going to probably be a little bit more than that. So-
All right. Right, but I guess, I don't know, maybe I'm just dense, but I'm having trouble seeing where the increases are on operating,
On 055, the vehicle rental,
right?
87,600.
Yes.
So maybe, let me talk you through 055. So in 2024, we rented 2 sanitation vehicles.
Yes.
Sent somebody out, drove them back from Ohio, we now have them.
Yep.
With the understanding that we would rent them for a period of time, and then that rental would convert to a purchase. So last year, we budgeted $163,244 to pay off the rental. Rental has to be paid for through operating. This year, we're budgeting $87,600 because we're only renting it through May, okay? And then by May, we will have purchased these vehicles through the capital bond ordinance that I was just discussing. So the reason that 163 is 87 is we're only doing a portion of the year as a rental, and then we're going to buy these trucks and we're going to own them outright. Yeah, we have the quotes on the purchase of the vehicles, so that's, that number is a given. It's a matter of if we have funding, and this is my goal here, we talked about it last meeting, I'll talk about it at every meeting until we spend it all. But I want to go back and look at old capital ordinances, because if there's money from prior administrations that's open, I want to use that before we ask this council to take on any new debt. So we're going to make that application to Sean's Trucks. That's why I gave you that window of 550, somewhere in that neighborhood. We're going to see what we can apply. We'll introduce a bond ordinance to cover the delta, and we'll own these trucks by the middle of the year.
And do we get credit in the purchase for what we paid in rental?
Yes, we do.
Yeah.
We're getting about $40,000
Oh,
or
no,
so.
it's not a full credit.
It's credit towards what we spent on the rentals. We get 25% of what we spent on that
That's what I'm
term.
saying, 25%.
Yeah.
And I want to say, that this is not customary in municipal government to do what we did with the rental into a purchase, but we were so desperate last year to have trucks on the road that were efficiently picking up solid waste and recycling that Sean came up with this creative idea. It got us the trucks immediately, and now we'll own these trucks moving forward, and hopefully, with the help of our fleet division, get a nice, useful life out of these vehicles.
Well,
And I'd also like to add that with the vehicles that we ordered last year that should be here hopefully in the first quarter or so, with the addition of these rentals, that will put us back finally at our full fleet, which we haven't been at in years.
If my recollection serves me, I believe that before we needed to rent these vehicles, in the prior budget cycle, you had said, we desperately need more trucks, and this council did not give you all the trucks you requested.
Correct.
Just check.
Thank you. So are we good to move on to the?
Yes, we are.
So then the other line item that I was referring to earlier was the tipping fees or the disposal fees. And that is line
48.
048, yes. So that number is going to go up this year based on our new contract. That was unavoidable. So it's a pretty big increase, but I'm glad we have a new contract with them because a lot of people are still paying a lot more than we are.
Questions? Move on.
All right.
All right. Sean, why don't you go to recycling operating, and then we'll do capital together. Is that
Will
okay?
do. Yep. Okay, so for recycling operating, everything is pretty flat here. We're going to save some money this year by signing the new contract with Atlantic Coast Recycling. Our disposal fees are going to come down pretty significantly. We are asking for we have a part-time employee right now, well, a part-time position. We don't have an employee right now. And over the last several years, we've gone through about 6 or 7 people to fill that position because they come in and then we train them and then they leave for better jobs. And then we have to start fresh all over again. And these are employees that we need to train. You know, we put a lot of effort into training them. They have to know how to work all the equipment at the recycling center. They deal with residents. Those of you that use the recycling center know them. But it's tough. So, and when we don't have that employee, we're using supervisors like myself and Moses Barahona to fill the position. We have to stay at the recycling center all day. So we were hoping to make that a permanent position, a full-time position. And to offset some of the cost, I went through some of the numbers, and right off the bat, every time I have to send my supervisor, Moses, on a route, he goes and he has to dump the truck. He gets overtime for it. We spent about $5,600 in overtime last year because we didn't have an employee to fill in that position. And obviously that would, for an employee that's not a supervisor, that overtime number will come down significantly. And that guy, the permanent position, will have a CDL, so we can send him to the dump, which will also save us some money, and it'll give us someone that we can train. I have a fellow in the sanitation department who has worked there before, and he's getting up there in age, and he loves it there, and the residents love him as well. So I was hoping to move him there and then hire a younger person in his position at sanitation. Yes. Yes. And he would come in at around $58,000 a year to start, as opposed, and there's the part-time employees, we pay about, I think, $30,000. And, but we never have them. I mean, we do, but then they leave. We had a wonderful gentleman that we hired that worked here in town at the vacuum repair shop, Mike, and he was great, and I was hoping one day we could hire him full-time, but then he found another job in Cleveland and he left. And it broke all of our hearts there.
Questions?
So it looks like it's the disposal fee that's really driving this, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Sure.
Yeah, we can ask Johanna to talk to Carol and see what they could put together. I mean, a lot of the recycling messaging is driven through Recycle Coach, which is the, the app that Sean's team uses down there, but we can certainly work to extend that into more of our general communications that come out from my
I do have
office.
to say, since Carol arrived, we have been working with her and doing a lot to reach out and just try and get people to recycle better, and she's been awesome at that.
But even beyond recycling, the bulk recycling, secondary market is something that we all talk about all the time. And I think you guys do such a great job. It's not like a criticism. I just think there needs to be more public awareness. Because, a lot of the younger generation maybe just love the secondary market. And I was having a conversation with about this, is that it's advantageous, to the landfill taxes. The more, and I know that we were in the first year I was here, we did billing for enough. I'd just like to see a little bit more
So,
of that.
to your point, we're working on and we haven't done it yet, so I don't want to. I will say we're working on a report for the styrofoam densifier report, and it's going to be awesome. And we're just getting some numbers together on how it affects the environment, what we took out of the waste stream, and also what we've gotten in. We've taken in so far over $10,000 in revenue for the styrofoam program, which is more than I would have thought. And it looks like we'll be able to expand to take on other towns as well.
So I love your enthusiasm, Sean. I'm going to make a statement, not a question. I mean, it's like $285,000 your budget's going up by.
I can't
I said
hear
it's
you.
like $285,000 that this is going up. So we're going to have to find places elsewhere to kind of cinch the belt. I will echo Siobhan's comments. You've been coming to us asking for new trucks for years, so I'm not questioning, the wisdom of what you're asking for, just the sheer fact that we're going to have to find some money elsewhere.
What you're going to find is that in both of Sean's budgets and when Chris and Mike come forward to talk about yard waste, disposal fees are, again, I categorize that like pension costs and healthcare costs.
Fixed costs.
It's fixed, and we're at the mercy of where we're going to take this material. To Sean's credit, he renegotiated our contract with Atlantic Recycling, who was closed for a period of time because they experienced a fire at their facility. I do think that while the number is significant, we negotiated a pretty good contract with them, especially when you compare it to what is happening across the state and in other municipalities. But this is one of those areas, and again, we're looking for pluses and minuses in this budget, but
Yes,
there are going to be
exactly.
things that we see that are going to be fixed that we're not going to have control over, and this is one of those areas.
So
Agreed. And-
appreciate that, and I'm not arguing with the discipline and the integrity that you showed in getting us the best deal possible. But to your point, I like that statement, pluses and minuses. This is going to be a plus. So the answer is we're going to have to find other places to save money to make up for this plus. So because this is the only reason I'm getting on my soapbox is I think this is the first one we've heard where there's been a significant jump over last year, and I understand we've got to pay it, but that means we've got to find other places to find
And you're going to
efficiencies.
see that in the police budget too, so.
Yeah, I do want to say it's a big plus. I mean, clearly this service, in these anecdotal conversations, everybody says such great things. And this is a service that Ridgewood loves, and you're sort of just left. And I appreciate
And I think
it's
this,
in highlights.
a big bulk of this goes away after this year with the purchase of the trucks.
Truck.
Yeah.
And once we get back, we really dug ourselves a hole with the garbage trucks. And that there's no avoiding that. We're still digging out of it, but I think this is going to be the
And
last
keep in
year.
mind, those rental fees, that $87,000 in rental fees will be off the books completely next year.
Completely, yes.
So, because then we'll have financed through the capital budget, the purchase of the trucks. So, that was a big nut last year. It was
And I
close to 150.
will reiterate, that falls squarely on the council's shoulders. Because if we had purchased the trucks when Sean had requested them, we would not have had the rental fees that we've incurred. And again, there were competing interests all the way around, and there was a reason why we couldn't do it at the time. But it came back to us, so.
I mean, looking backwards, COVID relief would have been great for this, because I'm imagining, sanitation went through the roof because everybody was home and improving their homes. I mean, that would have been a great use for that money.
Yeah, unfortunately, that ship has sailed. There's lots of other things that money should have been spent on that it wasn't, but we weren't here, so it is what it is. But like I said, again, Sean, I do agree with my colleagues. I think the world of your department. It's just a financial reality at the end of the day. We're not going to raise taxes on our citizens 5, 6, 7, 8% because of disposal fees. It's going to be incumbent upon us to find other places to find efficiencies to offset those disposal fees that we have to pay.
With that, you want to transition to capital on both the recycling and sanitation side? So as we get to that, I will tell you that we have been using that $600,000 number as the placeholder for the new garbage trucks. Goes to my earlier comments about trying to find open capital, if it exists, to reduce that number slightly. So I think we've covered that one, but if you want to talk about the 2 requests for recycling, Sean?
Wait, can I just ask a question, Keith? You're saying 600, but I wrote down 5.
That was, the 600 was the placeholder.
Okay.
And based on our capital budget meeting that we had this morning and
Okay.
some of the other factors that are going to affect the capital budget, we're trying to get that number down to 5 or 550.
Got
I'm
it.
sorry, which tab are we looking at here?
Sanitation.
Oh, sanitation.
It's near the back. Sand cap.
Oh,
Yes, this is for 2.
Sorry.
So we use that placeholder because that's the overall value of the trucks. But then when you start to minus what we get back from the rental fees, then that number comes down. And then, like Keith said, we're going to be looking at, we had some unused capital that I think we can apply to these purchases to get it down a lot.
And what's the average lifespan of a garbage truck?
They say 10 years or 100,000 miles.
All right, so we should be not seeing this again for a little while then, right?
Well,
The next time, the next time right now is probably 2027. We have 2 2017 trucks that in 2027
So we think
will.
about 2 years-ish, okay.
And Sean doesn't know this yet, but based on, the end of the rentals, purchase of these vehicles, once that's settled, we're going to ask Sean to prepare, like we asked Chief Judge to prepare,
A sinking fund.
a 10-year schedule, which is what
Yeah.
John just completed for us relative to the fire apparatus. We're going to ask Sean to do that with regard to both the sanitation fleet and the recycling fleet, so that we have a plan and we can space these payments out, and we're not at a point where we're asking the council for, 4 trucks in a year. Not a fair situation for anybody. So, that's part of our long-term planning on the capital side.
That's great.
And that'll make it so that the next time he needs a truck and we have competing interests, we're not going to say, yeah, we can't afford it this year, and get ourselves back into the same bind. So I want to thank everybody for we all learn from what's happened and we move forward. And this is a good plan.
Sean, why don't you talk about the F-350 and the locker rooms?
So the F-350, we had a surplus truck 273. It's a Ford F-250. It just served its purpose. It's at the end of its life. And the oops, I'm sorry, I had you guys in my.
What do we use these trucks for, like the,
So
yeah,
So the small pickup trucks for recycling, we have 2 pickup trucks and 2 rack trucks. We use them for the collection of the metal on the bulk days. So right now, we're using the supervisor's truck, but it's not suited for it because it doesn't have a tailgate lift.
Got it.
And also, I know Mike's fleet depends on that truck for plowing, so we're down a plow right now as well.
and the 250 we're replacing, how old is that?
That was a 2013.
Okay. $30,000 for locker rooms?
So $30,000 for the locker rooms right now. If you've been down to our break room in the recycling center, we share it with Parks. The floors are all ripped up and the lockers are old and there's not enough of them. So we're looking to take them out and put in more lockers because we have more employees than we used to with the parks and recycling growing. And it's just not a pleasant place to be if you want to break for lunch. And that's a side of the, I know last year we put in for the 65,000 to do the bathrooms, because right now we only have one bathroom for 24 people.
So we did the bathrooms?
No,
last-
not yet.
You put it in for, we didn't give it to you? This is expensive?
No, we got it, but bigger problems came up, and we had to put it on hold until we figure out a plan. We're
So
meeting next
there's
Friday.
essentially two ways to solve this problem, because there's sanitary line issues that exist there too. So Rich Charlton and Chris have been discussing with Sean and Rich how to best solve this problem. Without question, and that's why the $30,000 essentially made the cut during our capital budget meeting, is to do these two work efforts together. We have to address the restroom facility down there. You cannot have one restroom for 24 employees. There's all kinds of issues with that. And in addition to that, every employee down there deserves to have, a space that's their own, a locker area where their personal belongings are secure. We're trying that facility. If you have not been down there, I would encourage you to, reach out either through me or directly to Sean or Matt Andrula. Do a walkthrough down there, because it is somewhat eye-opening. But we want to get this project underway, and we want to get the facilities down there to a standard that we can be proud of when it comes to our Parks Division and our sanitation and recycling. folks.
So if the bathrooms cost 65,000 that we didn't do, what does the 30,000 get us?
The locker rooms.
The locker rooms.
Just the locker rooms. So
The existing capital would only effectuate the improvements to the restrooms.
So the 65,000 we didn't spend, but we have it to spend still, and now we're asking for another 30,000 to do the lockers in
So that
addition
we can
to
do the
bathroom.
project all at once, get the economies of scale. If we're going to do this, we should not do it piecemeal. That's the
It'd be more
recommendation.
efficient, Evan, with the carryover capital. I'm assuming that 60, yeah, it
So
just
the
seems-
other reason it hasn't been done as well is because, again, with the sanitary line issues, we're going to have to do some ripping up of the parking lot, and we're planning to pave the parking lot. We've been waiting to get on the schedule. I think we're on the schedule for this year.
Or
So this
relocate
year-
the restrooms to the other side of the
Or relocate the
building. So
restrooms,
there's-
yes.
But it sounds like the restrooms is a done deal. You got your 65,000 last year, that's going to happen, right?
Well, we're either running a new sanitation line across the parking lot and somewhat across the building, or we're moving the restrooms to the other side of the building. And that's the equation that Chris and
Right, and that's paid
Rich
for
and these
already, so
guys
that's
need to
not
figure
before
out.
us.
It's a funded done deal, but not an executed done deal. So we still
Right.
have 24 employees in a less than, and I've been there, less than ideal situation. So if we're going to do it, the improvements now for this year, 65's done, like that was last year.
Right, so that's fixed. The bathrooms, whatever you guys come up with, that money's been allocated, everybody gets new bathrooms, as soon as you guys finish that, that's good.
Right.
So the 30,000 for the locker rooms is what we're adding, as you're saying, right?
Yeah,
Correct.
it's this
Yeah,
year's.
100%.
I just think it's, this is a very physical job. Those numbers are very high. It's a very uncomfy space back there, and I think it should be improved. I mean, we have beautiful amenities, and there's a lot of, and I know this more not because of Sean, but because of Parks, and that is a stunning number to
So
think
the
people.
other issue down there with the locker room is that the locker room is right outside of Johanna's office. There is no changing room. She's walked out of her office to get supplies, and guys are in their underwear. And it's less than an ideal situation.
We have an antiquated facility that we need to address. And I'm confident that we can recommend the $30,000 in the final capital budget.
From what I know of what Keith refers to as the Hunger Games, if this made it through, that facility is in really bad shape.
And I do strongly encourage you, when you have some time, to have Sean just, give you a 5-minute tour. That's all you'll need to
Yeah.
understand what we need to do down there.
Understood.
All right.
Yep.
Anything else for Sean?
Nope.
You good?
All right.
Thank you, Sean.
We're going
Thank
to
you.
kick Rich Calby
Thanks, Sean.
off. Yeah, well, we're going to invite Chris and his team up to do their departments, and then we'll bring Rich back up for the water presentation once the rest of his team gets here. Chris, come on up. 9. We're going to go from 9 to 17 with Mr. Rudishauser. Yes.
Sorry, so this is zoning board we're going to?
Good question. I don't know where.
Is that BM?
I have BLDZ, is that it?
Olivia, what's zoning under?
BLDZ? Yeah. BLDZ.
How about, Mike, how about we start with you, Mike? We'll work our way from the bottom up. This way we can get the division heads in and out, if that's okay?
Sure.
So we'll start with streets,
We just
yard
found
waste,
zone.
and fleet, which are all covered by Chris
on,
and
streets.
Mr. Junta.
Are we starting with streets now?
Is it called streets? Just so
We're
I
going
know.
to start with streets.
Is STR?
Yes.
STR.
Good evening, Mayor and Council.
Hey, Chris.
All right, for the street
Good evening,
division,
Chris.
I think our budget is pretty much unchanged. Anybody has any questions, we'll try to answer.
You have to
the best
bring
we
the
can.
microphone
hold the
up
mic
to your
closer.
mouth, please.
Okay, does anybody have any questions?
Here we go. Questions?
So you're going up $187,000?
Yep.
You want to walk me through where that is, where we spend that extra money?
We have some significant costs on disposal. Keith alluded to that. One of the things
Which
that...
line item is that?
Let me go down here. Other contractual services,
Number 29, okay.
line item number 029.
And that's disposable, because that's a significant jump over what we spent last year.
Yeah, we are getting rid of our street sweepings in a prompt manner. We hadn't done that for a number of years. We had accumulated them in a location I will not divulge. And DP's been very polite about it with us. We did finally find a facility that will take them. It's just over the New York State border. It's in Rockland County, Mike? And we trucked out a whole bunch of stuff last year, pretty much cleaned it up. And
If you can.
we're going to anticipate that this year, every bit that we clean up street sweeping is going to go off to Rockland County or Orange County. We also had our yard waste disposal, although that's more in the yard waste budget, I'm sorry.
Wait, Chris, are you on 29? Because 29 is related to cold weather only for me.
I'm sorry?
On 29, 029 is only, I'm seeing it only as cold weather. Like it's blank. Is anybody else on the same? It's all blank on the top.
But
It's all cold weather related on our form.
it's also where I think we dispose of our street sweepings. That's a big issue that came up this past year.
Yeah, I'm just not, Olivia, help us out here. I'm not seeing that as a line item.
As cold weather, that would just, what we usually use is salt. Right now, we're in a very high salt winter.
Right.
We keep having these storms like we had this morning.
No, I'm just trying, bear with me. Where are the leaves and the streets? Yeah,
It's a separate budget.
okay.
You're
So-
gonna have a different
okay,
spread,
'cause
you're gonna have a different spreadsheet.
As long as it's not supposed to be on 29, because
You're gonna have-
29 for us is only cold weather.
Yeah, you're gonna have yard waste, and actually 31, if you
Okay.
click on tab 31, it takes you to the rock salt, calcium chloride, brine
Mm-hmm.
line items, and that, that request is there for 75,000.
Got it.
So in addition, the prior year, we used snow trust funding, about $150,000 to reduce the appropriation. Depending on where we are, I'd like to keep building that up if possible, but depending on where we are with the budget overall, we'll figure that out.
Okay.
Is your mic on? I don't think so.
So actually, just going back, temporary and seasonal, why is that up so much?
Pardon?
Temporary and seasonal employees, you spend
13.
What number you on?
33,000?
He's on the main
13.
page. It's up
13.
260%. Line 13.
Yeah, we have an ask, and last year we spent a lot less because we couldn't get anybody to work for us.
And what does that line item cover?
That covers the people to pick up the yard waste during yard waste season. They're 28-hour, no more than 28-hour-a-week employees, so they don't get benefits. We raised their salaries a little bit, but we didn't get much interest this past year.
So how did we cover it last year?
We used our staff that didn't do other tasks. We took them off from pothole fixing, road repairs, catch basin repairs, and put them on picking up yard waste.
Okay. And going back to 29, I'm still lost as to how we're going to spend $190,000 more than we did this year, or last year.
So last year's appropriation was also reduced by $60,000 in that line item for snow trust.
If you go to the detail on 029, right, you'll see in the bottom right-hand corner, in parentheses, the number of 150,000. That's the application of the snow trust. So he took money from the trust fund and moved it over to offset this particular line item. We haven't applied any of those trust fund accounts or budget credits yet. We need to see where we are. We need to get through these hearings with the council. We need to determine where our surplus stands and, where our.
So that's helpful. So the $11,700 that we actually spent last year, we actually spent a lot more than that. We were just able to offset what we actually spent with the trust, which brought us down to the 11.7.
Correct, because what we budget for snow, and we've had a few light years of snow, we're able to take that dollar amount, move it over to trust for future years. We've been doing that regularly, so now when we need it, we can apply it.
So we think this number will come down.
That's correct.
Okay.
What's left in the trust? What's left in the trust?
That you'll get before the end of the night, too.
The only thing I will say on the temporary and seasonal is I supported Chris's recommendation on trying to up that line item. Leaf season is a bear in this town, and frankly, the more trees we plant, the more leaves we have. So, there's a cause and effect, let's call it. And it was taxing on Mike and his crew. I would get complaints daily about leaf collection. Not because these fellows weren't doing a good enough job, but there was an expectation that the day the landscaper put the leaves out, that the next morning Mike and his crews were to be out there picking it up, and that's just not necessarily a realistic expectation in every situation. So again, being able to have additional temporary and seasonal staff to support that task is going to be beneficial and make the process more efficient. We had guys out there working 6 days a week. If you remember, Chris came into a meeting and asked permission to start the process at 5 a.m., which we granted with half-powered leaf blowers, I think was the provision that we gave them in the marching orders to go out there and work that early in the morning. But we need more support during leaf season. It's taxing on the crews, and we're taking guys off of other responsibilities in order to help meet that need. So, Mike, I don't know if you want to talk more to that, but that's my assessment of the situation.
Yeah, no, Keith is right on that. We're pulling guys from different departments. We're pulling guys from
Is
fleet.
that on?
Just make sure the green light's on, Mike.
Yep, it's on.
Yeah.
You just need to speak close to it.
Okay. So, yeah, we're pulling guys from fleet. We're pulling guys from other divisions, so we're getting behind on other work. And the guys are out there 10-hour days, 6 days a week. And the part-timers, we only have them for 28 hours. 7 hours a day, so when they're done, we're pulling people from other divisions to come and jump in and help.
Are we going to be able to get guys? Because I remember you just said we couldn't get them. Or did I mishear?
I don't have a crystal ball on the economy. I think last year the economy was very good. Maybe the economy is going to go a little down this year, and there might be some interest. It's hard to predict.
I understand.
But Mayor, along the same philosophy that this council used, back in 2023 with lifeguards.
Yep.
You have to be competitive to get folks to come out and do these jobs, which equates to having a line item like this in here. Now, maybe this isn't sustainable. By the time Bob and I finalize this process, this might be on the cutting board. I don't know that, but in concept, I support being able to help streets with the yard waste and especially the leaf collection in the fall.
What were we offering on an hourly basis in the last year, and what are we offering on an hourly basis this year?
I don't know that off the top of my head.
I just want to chime in that the leaf.
Wait.
I don't know that off the top of my head.
I'm just saying, you said we're being more competitive, so are we offering more?
Because I think the offer was around minimum wage, right?
I think it's $20 an hour.
Yeah.
And then if they had a CDL,
And it's 22.
then it went up to 22.
There you go.
And last year, it was not.
No, that was last year, and it was not, we were not that successful. What we do is, Mike and I belong to an organization called the Bergen County Superintendents and Directors of Public Works. We talk to our colleagues, and our colleagues circulate any job ads they have, so we see what other towns are offering. We're right there with the rate, with other towns.
Yeah,
So,
I'm just,
we'll have to see how
again,
it goes.
in terms of, to go back to the lifeguard analogy, if we're, and look, and I never want to spend more than we have to, but if you're not getting any applicants at $20 an hour, you're probably not going to get applicants at $20 an hour this year. I mean, it's just, well, it's just simple.
Once the budget is approved, we'll see what you folks allocate, and we'll proceed accordingly. Once we start advertising, we'll have a pretty good feel within a couple of weeks whether there is any interest. One of our permanent part-timers just transferred over to water pollution to fill a vacancy over there. Another permanent part-timer that had left last summer is also interested in a full-time position with the village. So we oftentimes dangle that as a gateway to other jobs in the village because we get to see how the individual works. It has been successful in the past. But again, the starting salary has to be there to attract them.
Yeah, and I'm just saying that if we need temporary and seasonal people, look, we can be right there with everybody else, the same way we were in the lifeguard shortage. We were there with everybody else, and there was a national lifeguard shortage. The following year, there was still a national lifeguard shortage, but there wasn't one in Ridgewood because we paid more. And so if we need to get this done, and it's probably going to be, here I'll go out on a limb and say, cheaper in the long run because we're not paying overtime, then it might be worth it to look at this line item at the end of the day and say, we're paying $20 an hour, maybe we should be paying 24, because you can't pay 21 and expect people to come. You got to give them a little extra if we're having trouble filling this. And I do remember also last year, as I recollect, didn't the cold come quickly and the leaves all fell at once?
It did.
And that was a big part of the problem, because they didn't fall gradually, so we couldn't pick them up gradually, and all of a sudden the streets were filled. So I think before we finalize this, you guys have to take a look at what was offered and what we want to offer, if we really want to address this, or if we just want to put it in a light item and hope and pray.
And I think that answers, what we were paying, Chris, $20 an hour non-CDL, 22 CDL.
Correct.
And we're going to have to take a look at what makes the most sense on an hourly basis to try to incentivize people to apply for these positions.
And do we pay benefits?
No.
No.
Just part-time.
So that's why I would
Yeah.
support it.
Yeah, but again, at the end of the day, if our, and again, I don't know what our guys get paid, but if we're paying them time and a half, our regular staff members, well, that's going to be significantly more than the 24 an hour.
Yes.
So at the end of the day, it's, if we increase the hourly wage for the seasonal people, it's not actually going to cost us money, it's going to save money. Because we're not, how much, do we know what our average hourly cost is for our regular staff members?
So also for the permanent part-timers, they can only work 28 hours a week. They have a certain amount of hours in a year. So if they hit those amount of hours in November, we have to lay them off until January 1st.
I understand.
Okay.
Do we know what our average full-time staff members make?
We'd have to
All
get
over
that
the board.
we'd have to get that
Yeah.
from payroll
And
now.
here, I'm going to, for example, I'm just going to say, let's say it's 25 an hour. Now we're going to pay them $37.50 an hour to work overtime, instead of 24 an hour for our seasonal people, to get it done more quickly, more efficiently, and at the end of the day, cheaper. So I urge you all to take a look at that, so that we can address this in the same way that we addressed the lifeguard shortage.
Just one more thing to keep in mind.
Yeah, Mike.
You make a good point, but a lot of the stuff that's done by the full-time staff is not stuff that can be done by part-time employees, such as the running of heavy equipment, driving of the big trucks.
I understand
Okay.
completely. It's a different skill set.
Right.
But we need hands.
Right.
We need more hands on deck.
Absolutely.
So, and that's why I'm saying we need to look at this in the big picture, so that we again, we're not saying, oh, well, we don't want to pay them that much.
Right.
At the end of the day, it's a lot cheaper than paying everybody overtime, and it's not killing our guys.
Right.
Because I know they make extra money, and it's nice in the envelope, but they go home at night and they're dead.
Yes,
So
that's for sure.
yeah.
I
Where's-
just wanted to say, too, that, to Paul's point, I think anything you can incentivize to, because it is a back-end burden now. I mean, these trees are holding on forever. And I also think that because the public is sometimes watching this, this is a general safety issue as well. With daylight savings, the leaves become a hazard for our roads, and I think you guys do a great job. I
Thank you.
agree. We should incentivize it, and I'm imagining, when we overwork people, we run the risk of disability as well. So I just wanted to say thank you for everything, and literally, I'm a big walker, and I watch these trees, and this year, they really did hold out a lot, and you got
Thank
it
you.
done, so thank you.
Thank you.
I hear that other towns require that leaves be bagged. Would there be any room for efficiency if we required residents to have their leaves bagged?
Not with the systems we use. We use the leaf vacs. We have 2 of them, thanks to council funding for it. They are very, very useful to keep the streets clean. The other thing is the loaders. We pick everything up with a loader, so a bag would just get broken up anyway.
Okay.
If you have bags, the most efficient way to pick individual bags up is usually you have to send a sanitation truck out with a driver and 2 guys loading.
So that eats up the staff.
That's
Yeah.
where we run
Okay.
into staff shortages.
We're set up differently.
We're almost at capacity at Lakeview right now. And I
Mike,
just
if
think
you
adding-
could speak into
Oh,
the.
sorry, I think we're pretty close to capacity at Lakeview right now, and adding thousands and thousands of bags might put us to a point where now we're paying to get rid of stuff.
Sure.
So that's, yeah.
So can I ask, where's paving on this, or is that another tab? I'm sorry? It's all capital?
Paving's all capital,
Thanks.
right.
Engineering.
So when we get to the end with Chris, we'll go through that. And like I said earlier, that's going to be asked to be introduced earlier than the regular capital
Gotcha.
budget, just so we
Okay.
can give Chris a head start on the bid this year.
All right, so he's up 187,000. Right?
Yes, streets.
Okay, and the 188 from recycling? So
But
numbers.
bear in mind, you have some credits that are going to ultimately
Okay.
be applied to this budget.
All right.
That's what you wanted to hear, right?
I want to hear, listen, you can eat the sandwich from either end.
Right.
If you're telling me revenue is going to be up to offset these costs, I'm a happy camper. Or if you tell me the costs are going to come down and revenue is going to be flat, I'm a happy
Right.
camper. I'm just looking at the bottom line for the taxpayer at the end of the day. So
Right.
I hear what you're saying. I will put my ire aside until I hear the revenue numbers.
And I just want to be clear with the council that, this is a living, breathing document. It changes daily, right? And we don't apply the credits until we have a full understanding of what the priorities are. And I say it all the time, a budget is a set of priorities, and those priorities change from year to year. That being said, once we have a full understanding of the direction that the council wants to go in, once we have a full understanding of the top priorities of the various departments, we're going to tie this all together. We'll make those applications to those budget credits where we can, to try to further drive it down using trust fund money and the like. And once we have a full handle on surplus, which we, are still working on year-end numbers from the end of last year, we'll put it all together, and you'll see a very different document by the time it comes up for introduction in March.
Anybody else? Good. Mike, thanks so much.
Not so fast.
Not so fast, Mike.
Yard waste.
Well, yeah, we have yard waste,
And
and then
fleet.
we have fleet services, central garage. Those are 2 other divisions and departments that Mike is responsible for.
So let's flip to yard waste, and then we'll do fleet after that.
Hold on. Looking.
Yard waste. See it?
Any questions?
Hold on.
Another 100 grand, huh? Yard waste. You're up 100,000, right?
So that's for disposal of the grass clippings.
Yeah, so the big number here is 048. The request is for 150,000. And again, this is the disposal aspect of what Mike's operation does when it comes to yard waste. So, Chris, do you want to just talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, we have a leaf composting facility. It's great. We're allowed to compost leaves. we're not allowed to add grass clippings. Leaves require a 275-foot buffer, that we have, to the nearest occupied buildings. Grass requires, I believe, a 1,000-foot buffer. We do not have that. So DEP has mandated in our operating permit that grass clippings that we collect be put into a container, into a box, a roll-off, and removed within a day or so of being collected.
Just so I understand, why is there a greater buffer required for grass?
The thought is that grass clippings stink more.
Wow. Good, thank
I
you.
mean, could we put grass clippings in our compost? Absolutely, but DEP would have to approve it.
Thank you for the succinct explanation that even I can understand.
Here to help.
Stink bad. So what about other contractual services? You're doubling that.
Other contractual services are the wear equipment on the tub grinder and the windrow. Right, Mike? The windrow is a very large machine. We just replaced it a few years ago, and it churns the leaf windrow, aerates it, and reshapes it. It's a great machine. You got to see it in action.
I'm sure it's for doubling your budget. I hope it is. I have no doubt.
Oh, that's nothing. The machine costs, I think, $750, $800.
I was going to say, that's the main machine at the compost facility, correct?
It is one of the two main machines. We also have the tub grinder
Yep.
that we run everything through before the material is windrowed, or before the material like brush is put out to our off-site disposal.
And why are you up 11% on salaries? What's changed? Your salaries and wages are up 11%. What's changed from last year versus this year?
We gave a slight raise, an increase to our lady who is the guardian of the gate. She has to log every truck.
The guardian of the gate?
Oh, yeah, you
I
can't
like
come in
that.
there unless she logs you in, because DEP requires us to do that. And she prepares the reports quite well for when DEP comes by to audit us. They drop in on us very unexpectedly, and we've been doing pretty well
So
with
the
it.
guardian of the gate is the $15,000, $16,000 difference.
Yeah, we had to give her a raise last
You
year.
you also have an employee who's on a step this year, so you
Right, so
have.
that's usually
So you have
3-4%.
that built into the settled amount that we discussed in
Right,
closed
no, I would
session on
expect to
the
see
blue collar.
3-4% with steps, and hopefully less than 3, but that's why the 11% cost
Yeah,
me.
you do have a couple of employees on steps, and you'll see that in the salary detail on the right-hand side.
Anybody else?
The one thing I will say is on the disposal fees, once we solidify our recycling trust fund, there could also be some credits that may be applied. Last year, I think we applied $25,000 to this line item. So again, depending on where we fall with those revenues, which we'll get to at a future budget meeting, there could be some applicable credits to this line item as well.
Everybody good?
Yep.
All right, fleet.
Fleet services or central garage?
So what's the tab under?
Fleet. It's 6 or 7 tabs before.
All right, any questions?
Yeah, you want to walk us through it?
Sure. Materials and supplies, costs have gone up. We pay more for oil, filters, and parts. Our mechanics, we have 4 of them, do a very good job. They do all the preventive maintenance services on the village-owned vehicles. They don't have really time to do that for the leased vehicles, because I think there's some discussion, right, Keith, on budget line item in the police department for their leased vehicles.
Yeah, we're going to talk about body work as a police department line item when the chief comes in at the meeting on the 19th.
Body work is also expensive. We've had a few dings here and there, so we have to fix those.
So $500,000, huh?
Yes?
Okay.
Chris, what happened with 26? Was it just deferred and not done? 026, maintenance of other equipment, you had 16, and the actual was only 570, and then it
We had a number of new pieces of equipment brought into the garage, tire changer, lifts and so forth. They're starting to age. Our tire changer, actually, I was in the garage one day, and the tire changer had a mechanic, Jamie, was working on a tire, and it exploded. It was a truck tire.
I can see that, but we had an appropriation of 16, and we didn't use it.
No, we didn't. We tried to be very cost efficient.
Okay. No, it's just, for us, it shows up as like a 2,000% increase because you only spent $500 from the appropriation last year. So that's
Yes.
all. Okay.
So $60,000 more this year for tires versus last year?
For tires,
Yes. Purchase of tires. 3C.
we might be bumping up against that if we have to buy loader tires.
Okay.
Mike, how much are loader tires?
6,000 apiece.
Speak into the microphone.
About 6,000 apiece
Wow.
What are
And do we
loader
not buy
tires?
them year over year? We only buy them,
when they need to be replaced.
okay. $30,000 increase for lubricants. $30,000 increase for lubricants.
I saw it.
Yes.
Why?
Exactly.
Price is going up.
And what it would, lubricant, as in motor oil? What do we,
Motor oil, transmission oil, hydraulic oil.
all right.
You know, when
We have several different stuff that we have to use for the several different pieces of equipment. And most of them are geared towards that specific piece of equipment, so they kind of have you stuck to that you're buying a product from them and not,
And-
aftermarket.
And the prices have tripled?
prices have doubled easily.
Okay. Where's the rest of the money? I mean, you're asking for $500,000 more. That's 90,000 right there. Your salaries and wages look fine, 3.5%. That looks great. Where's the rest of this money going?
It's going into the maintenance of our rolling stock.
No, individual line items. Like, what are we spending so much more money on versus last year?
We had materials and supplies last year. Well, let's see, material supplies, 030, we're asked for 225, and our actual for last year was 214, 184, so that's pretty close.
Right?
Other contractual supplies, our last year was 196.70, we're asking for 220.
So what does that mean? That's $30,000 more than you spent last year.
This for the machine, oils, so forth, lubricants, or probably for parts.
Probably.
Yep.
Okay.
There's actually an 18 bullet point detail on what that line item entails on 029, if you go to the detail.
For example, in 03C, purchase of tires, we're asking for 95,000. Our actual at the end of the last year was 43,383. That's because we hadn't bought any loader tires. If we buy like a set of 4, we're looking at 25, 26,000. Per loader, we have 5.
Plus, I cut your budget last year. About $10,000 in that line item.
But I'm still having, like, what are the big ticket items that get us up to an extra $500,000?
I think what Evan is saying is that, okay, there's 50,000 you've shown here and 40,000 there. He doesn't see, and I'm not sure I see either, that it all adds up to 501,000.
We may want to bring this
So
one back.
I just want to be
Yeah.
clear that that highlighted number in the lower left-hand corner is not the budget over last year. What you need to look at here is item, well, I'm looking at it in a column, but item K, for those of you who are on a laptop, and modified 2024 budget appropriations, which is the second column from the right, has the total budget for fleet at 888,916. This year, the request is 968,593.
So it's an $80,000
Right.
increase. Yeah, this
Right,
is.
that highlighted number in the bottom right-hand corner is the 1% increase over
Okay.
last year's
So
other
we're not-
expenses
so-
in
so-
total on the total
So
budget.
they're not asking for an extra $500,000 now? they-
No, 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 no.
Okay.
What-
So
what-
they
what-
Extra 80.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
The one was a target.
Yeah, what you're looking at as the delta is the second column from the right, which in this case was 8088, 91684. And then the request for this year is the first column after the detail, which is 968, 593.91.
But I guess my question would be, I'm actually looking one over then. Yeah, what they actually spent was 793,000. What they're asking for is 968.
Correct. The only caveat that I will tell you, and Olivia had a family emergency, so she had to excuse herself, but keep in mind, we can still pay 2024 bills until the end of March.
You'll have,
So not all, that number of 794, not all of 2024's expenses may be drawn from that yet.
I just submitted a whole bunch of vouchers
right.
that I signed today that are all from 2024. And they will go against that 794 amount.
So that 794 number is as of the day that she generated the documents.
Okay.
for
That's
the-
about
for the
2
council's
weeks ago.
consideration.
So it's about 175,000 then is what they're asking for over what they actually spent last year.
No, because you have fourth quarter still payable out against 2024. So we see this with the trees, and so the 794 is not fully demonstrated for 2024. That he could have invoices that he just processed to get you, let's say it's $100,000, then you're closer to the actual appropriation of 880, and then the increase is 968. So like on trees, because we plant late in the fall, we were just going over this, we might not see the actualized, like you might be like, wow, we spent a lot less on trees, but we really didn't, because we're waiting for the tree vendors to give us. It's not like T+1, Evan, there's terms like 30 to 60 days. So you could be paying, particularly with this, you could still be paying for things that occurred in probably, help me out here, November, December, I would hope not October.
So we don't know what we've actually spent yet, is what you're saying?
Right.
Yeah, but that 794 is not closed for the year, 24.
So in a perfect world, we ask the departments to encumber the funds for those items that they know about. For example, tires. When the budget's adopted, they'll come in and they'll give me a purchase order for like $500,000, estimating that's what the cost is going to be for the year to purchase tires. When it's not encumbered and it's on a voucher, that may not be in here. As Chris said, he had a group of them that may have come in late that we haven't processed yet. So that 794 will definitely go up.
Okay. So what you're saying is we're only 7.75% above appropriated last year,
Correct.
Yes.
about 80,000.
Correct.
And that can be lower if the invoices are processed.
Well, no, against appropriated, it can't.
No, appropriate's going
Right.
to stay the same.
Sorry,
It's the-
sorry,
Against
right.
the expenditure.
All good?
Yeah.
Next.
All right. Michael, thank you.
Mike, thanks so much.
Jim, if you and Bill want to come up, we're going to do water pollution control next.
So just responding to your questions, the snow trust has about $450,000 in it. The recycling trust has $123,000 in it. And the outstanding debt for general is a total of $75 million as of 12/31/24. It's $30 million in bonds, $32 million in notes, and $13 million authorized and unissued. If you want parking and water, I'll give you that as well.
How long are our bonds outstanding? For
So in
each, every time we go out to bond?
So in the general fund, it's all predicated on useful life. So in the general fund, it's mostly equipment, so that usually goes 7 to 10 years max. If you have a purchase of land or a building, things of that nature, that can go out 20, 25 years. Water is usually, for the big items, 30 years. 30-year useful life, because your treatment facilities, things like that.
Right. Thank you, Bob.
Wells go for 30 years? or-
They can go up to 30 years, yes. Again, each one's got a structure to it, but generally speaking, water has the longer useful life.
So can we get a copy, like, I know I asked for this last year, because now, can we get a copy of all open trusts and what they are, to reference during this?
Sure, and we will be covering this towards the end.
It's part of a future budget meeting.
Yeah, no, I know, just because we're going to toggle back and forth with it,
Okay,
I'm sure.
so that isn't completed yet. That's
Okay.
part of the financial, but
I'll
I'll
wait. I'll
get
be
it to you as
patient.
soon as it's available.
Okay.
And Mayor, if I could just do a go back, the only request from the Streets Division for capital this year in a Tier 1 priority is a $44,000 investment in a new hot box trailer, which I believe will make it through to the final budget. But Mike, you just want to very quickly just explain why you need that?
Yeah, the one we have right now is about 7 years old. It's giving us issues from day one.
We really can't hear him, so if he's going to talk, he needs to speak into the mic.
So the one we have right now, it's about 7 years old. It's given us problems pretty much since day one. It's been back and forth to the manufacturer. It's to the point now where it's got to be plugged in. Pretty much, we get maybe 3-4 hours out of it, and we're losing a lot of material because everything's cutting out. Parts are getting harder to find for it, and it's time for a new one.
And this fills the potholes, so every time one of you gets a complaint from a resident and lets me know, and I tell Mike, this is the device that we need to properly fill it.
Yeah, I get a lot of complaints from a resident living at 280 Rivera Court about potholes, so.
I thought you were going to say Evan loves to complain about
No,
potholes.
no, my wife, so.
Okay, all right, so let's move on to water pollution control. Chris, if you and Jim want to take us through?
Yeah, we bid out chemicals, as we do every year. That's reflected in our budget request. We bid out lab services. We're going to be having more lab services. Our lab manager had a very good idea. She's going to take some samples and run them for PFAS before the PFAS plant at the water pollution facility comes online. So we have a baseline to see if they have any impact on our effluent.
Questions?
The happy news, since Councilman Weiss likes positive news, we made about, subject to Bob, about $150,000 last year from our liquid waste acceptance program. That's where the haulers bring in liquid waste and we treat it for them. If you're familiar with the term honey dippers, those are the ones that are coming in. Nothing that you do.
So, Chris, on the full-time staff requests, we have 2 laborers that we're seeking replacements for, right, which will come in at a starting salary. And then we have 1 additional laborer request to add to the head count. Do you want to just explain to the council why you and Jim are making that request?
Yeah, the 2 individuals, one is moving over to the water company, and the other one decided to retire. So we have to replace them with laborers starting at step 1. We're requesting a new employee to put on the collection system truck. Most of the time, the collection system truck goes out with 1 person on it, and it's getting very difficult for him to pull up the manholes and do his job, so he needs some help.
So you're only asking for 2, right? Because there's 3 on here.
Well,
We're
there's
asking for 2 replacements.
2.
2 replacements
And one
and 1
open?
new body.
1 new person, correct.
Okay.
If we're asking for more bodies, would that not help us with overtime?
It can. Overtime is still when we run 24/7. If a shift operator calls in sick, Jim has to get somebody on overtime to cover the shift.
But okay. I'm just struggling with if we're bringing in more people to help part-time. Again, wouldn't that help us with overtime? I get your point why you have to pay overtime, but wouldn't we expect to see less overtime if we hire more people?
Not necessarily, because again, as I said, the shift operators, the shifts are assigned. Shifts are from 7 to 3, 3 to 11, 11 to 7. If the midnight guy at 10:30 at night calls in sick,
Right.
We have to get a person there. DEP requires the plant to be staffed. And that person is then paid overtime.
Jim, what shift would the new hire, that's not a replacement, what shift would they cover?
The rotating shifts. I have a guy that's on the rotating shifts now that I need to make full-time days so he can go on the hydro with Jimmy that I used to do. So when you made me a supervisor, I essentially came off that truck and it was never replaced. So a lot of times he's working by himself. That limits where he can work because I'm not going to put him in the middle of East Ridgewood Ave by himself, you know. And this other gentleman who is on call for the truck is still on rotating shifts. So when he's not on 7 to 3, Jimmy's going out alone. I need to make him a full-time day guy and then replace him with, you know, a new hire that would work the shift work.
Any other questions on this?
Good. Jim, thanks so much.
All right,
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
You want to do water pollution capital, Chris? Which actually, I take that back because that's the appropriation from last year, which was credited to this year, right?
Yes, that's
Yeah.
correct. And this year, working with Bob Rooney, we're going to use old capital for our capital needs.
So I will call the council's attention again, this coming Wednesday night's meeting, I think there's 8 or 9 requests for equipment and maintenance topics from Chris that are going to be discussed at the work session, all of it coming from prior capital that's still open. So there's going to be a heavy emphasis on this at Wednesday night's work session.
Yeah, I think water pollution, I think, has maybe 5 or 6 resolutions.
Right.
Before you, I have several resolutions from streets also before the council.
All concerning open capital, so.
Good.
All right. All right, building maintenance, Rich, you want to come up, do that in signal?
Sorry, which tab is this?
Yeah, building maintenance.
BM.
Gotcha.
Hold on, I'm still thinking here.
Evening, Rich.
Mayor, how are you?
Good, nice to see you.
You too.
All right, so on the employee side, this only covers one of our employees now. One was transferred out to another division as part of us bringing in a professional cleaning contractor under co-op to perform the cleaning in this building and other buildings. So the salaries and wages is pretty self-explanatory. Want to get into the other expenses. Rich, obviously the 772 line item, which is the cleaning service, you want to just talk us through that, how we procured them, what services they're performing here and other places, and just want to call the council's attention to the fact that last year's contract was not a full year, so the request in there under line 772 is for a full year of their services. But go ahead, Chris.
Right, so we transferred the evening custodian to another department, and for less money than what we were paying that custodian at 8 hours, we replaced it with 12 hours a day of service, so we're getting more hours of service for less money. Take care of that.
So we're up about 80,000, it looks like. I mean, why, why is, and I see you have other expenses, you have the building maintenance against a bunch of town assets. Why is everything up so much? Like
Most of our
200
buildings are getting older, they're requiring more care. A lot of our HVAC systems need more service. The water company just had a heating plant go out in one of their buildings last Friday. They required staff to fix it over the weekend.
But like Leicester Stables, for instance, you're tripling the amount of money it takes for that one building. Like, why is that? Like, you budgeted Leicester Stables, assuming I'm reading this right, you budgeted $4,800. You actually spent $3,481, but I get it, could be another quarter's worth of money there. And now you're saying it's going to take $16,500. You're tripling it.
Part of the custodians, the contractor custodians are working at Leicester Stable.
Yeah, but why is it 3 times more expensive in 2025 than it was in 2024?
And you see the same thing on line 37. Those are the two biggest building increases.
Which one was that?
Solid waste main building, and so it's 244% with Leicester Stable, and then on the outlier, 224 on the main building of solid waste. It's 424%.
Lester Stable in the details the janitorial supplies.
And to your question, the solid waste main building, requesting $10,480, and our last year's total was $5,023. We have to fix a floor over there, and we've had to repair a number of things. This is in the garages at 220 Chestnut Street.
Wait, hold on. Last year's appropriation was 2,000, not 5.
Yeah, it was
But you're
2,000,
at-
but we spent 5,000.
You spent 5.
I mean, like, same thing, Village Hall, you're up $50,000 versus last year?
Right.
Because as I said earlier, that wasn't the full year for the cleaning company. It was only a partial of the year. So the 152 reflects the entire year.
And the HVAC systems are starting to get problematic after 20 years.
Chris, a lot of these figures that are building-specific are for specific projects of things that now need replacement, is that correct?
No, a lot of it is also general. You know, if a window needs to be replaced or repaired, if a floor cracks up and needs to be fixed and repaired, you know, Rich.
But that's exactly what I'm saying, is that, okay, this floor is done, we need to get a new floor here. I mean, that's what a lot of this is.
For example, if you go to the detail on 770, which is the solid waste main building, you're going to see that there's fire sprinkler repairs that are necessary. There's a garage door maintenance issue. There's an annual fire extinguisher, annual inspection. You know, all those things are detailed in the back pages of that under tab 770.
I mean, I see the detail, and I'm not going to go line by line against the detail, and I do appreciate it's in there. It's just very hard for me to understand why these expenses are going up exponentially more than what we spent last year as a whole. I think that's what I'm questioning.
I also, Bob, why under operating is Shedler even here? Shouldn't it still be in development? We went from Shedler has a line item in operating at 2,000. I mean, it's only 2,000, but how are we operating it and not hitting it like under capital?
Shedler, we have, you know, signal goes by by Shedler, how often, Rich?
Now, or during winter time, every week, but the regular season, probably about once every other week.
So are you going in the
So-
house, Rich?
Yeah,
And you're just checking and?
checking.
And all the water's turned off?
Water,
is
the
now.
water's shut off, yes.
Okay,
We're making
good.
sure the heat is still on.
Okay.
And nobody's gotten in the building.
And can I just say that this has nothing to do with park development? This has to do with maintenance of the house that
I
we're
got
now
it.
responsible for. So you have $1,000 in there for cleaning, general maintenance, pest control. You have $200 for cleaning supplies, which you have to have there. You have the fire extinguisher inspection, which needs to be budgeted for every building that we maintain. You know, there's expenses to maintain that house, even though it sits empty.
I didn't realize staff was going by. That makes me feel better. Is there any way to get a list of, like, what the utilities are on that now? Because we have a demonstration, even with the heat low. Because if we're thinking about talking to a tenant,
We
we have a meter there, right?
We don't see, you know, myself and Rich, we don't see the utility bills for the building for gas and electric. They go directly to finance, so we have no knowledge of that.
But you have that now, Bob, because we've had a CO now for about a year.
So I have to look and see what the bills are for that piece of property.
Okay. Like, I mean, outside the budget, just because that's a longstanding, I'd love to see what the utilities are, because if we do get a tenant, we'd want to negotiate, maintenance into that.
Yeah. Yes, no, I understand.
Okay.
But
The,
with a
the-
tenant, you have to bear in mind, right now, we have the heat at, what do we have it at?
It's 55.
That's like, you sound like my mom, and you're my
I was gonna say, it
landlord.
sounds like
Put a
fun. You should
bathrobe
have, like,
on.
kids all the
The building's empty. The building's empty. There's no reason
Put a
to
little
have
box
it.
over it, that you can lock it to change the heat? Or-
Yeah. If you do start using the building, the utility costs are going to go up because the heat has to go up, and you're going to use more electricity when people are there. Right now, there's no lights on, and the heat's at 55 because no one's in the
No, I'd
building.
just love to see. I mean, last time I was there was during the summer, and I thought I was going to pass out because the air conditioning wasn't on. I just think for general, as the House comes into discussion, I didn't realize that kind of, and thank you for checking on it. I don't think anybody realized we were attributing operating costs on top of the capital investment.
Right.
Are you
Yeah.
with me, council? Did any of you know that?
I hadn't thought it through, but now it makes complete sense.
Okay.
So I don't, I mean, again, I'm going to stop because I think, Keith, I'm going to leave this to you. But again, I struggle. Fire headquarters costs $15,000, lesser stable, $16,000. Fire, if anything, I would think the fire headquarters would cost more for maintenance. It's $80,000, and we're getting to the point where these little things are going to bring up the tax bill. And this page just really, I'm having trouble digesting it.
Well, for example, fire headquarters, we are requesting just a hair over what we actually spent in 2024.
Which is great. But why is it that one was flat, but other ones you're seeing 226% increase, 244% increase? And I know you've broken it down, but I don't follow why some of this stuff costs us, why the increases are so exponentially more than versus last year.
We have a lot of very old buildings.
Again, I'm going to go to, and I don't think that maybe it wasn't understood when I suggested it, or maybe I'm off base, that when we have exponential increases, it's because there is a part of the building that has failed or is at the end of its useful life, and we now need to replace it, whether it's windows or floors or heating systems. So that's a specific item that we are spending money on. Is that correct?
Yes. We got hammered this year on fire headquarters. Excuse me. We had 2 air conditioning compressors go out this year that we had to replace. Those are $5,000-$6,000 each. We had 3 garage doors that break down. Garage doors are not something that you cannot have work in a firehouse. They have to get out.
So these are not, okay, we pay our guys or a service to clean every week or every month or all of that. That's not what we're talking. We're talking about there's a specific problem when we see a big increase in that building that HVAC system needs to replace, carpeting needs to be replaced.
Yes.
Bathroom needs to be replaced,
Yep.
things like that, correct?
Yes, and in the sanitation garage, all the sprinkler heads, the fire sprinkler heads are 25 years old. They have to be replaced. We can't do that in-house. We have to have a contractor come in who's certified in fire sprinklers. They have to come in and take off every single sprinkler head. There could be 50 of them at that cost. That's going to be a large building maintenance cost. That's not attributed to custodial or paper products.
Right.
That's coming up this year. So, and let me explain to you one thing about specifically the fire headquarters. They have 4 air conditioning systems separate for the whole building. It's a big building. We put in a capital request this year to have 2 of those systems replaced. 2 of them are original to the building in 1993. What's unique about these units is usually you have 2 parts to an air conditioning system, the air handler inside the building and then a condenser outside the building. Usually in the condenser outside, you can replace a compressor and move on. These 2 original units, they're proprietary and they don't make them anymore. So when one of those 2 outside units goes, we also have to replace the inside unit. We pushed it off the budget from this year. It's not happening this year. If one of those 2 air conditioning units go down this year, we're going to have to find a way to change the inside unit at the same. And that's a lot more work because you're dealing with drop ceiling systems, taking those apart, taking out other piping, putting a unit inside that's not same as outside. So we have been putting this in for capital, but this gets pushed off. So this happens a lot in facility maintenance where we request something to be changed and it gets pushed off, and then we end up fixing things that are too old, that should have been replaced already. So some days we're working magic, keeping some of these systems apart. EMS, we fixed that unit again today.
I hear what you're saying. It's the number of extraordinary expenses. You know, and I get, like, stuff's going to break, you're going to have one-off years, but you have at least a half a dozen here that have gone up by more than 100% versus last year. And then looking at 2023, you spent 91,000, you appropriated 91,000. Last year, you appropriated 164,000. This year, you're appropriating 252,000. So in 2 years, we've gone from 91,000 to $252,000?
Wait till we start to replace the roofs on Village Hall and elsewhere.
Okay.
That's coming up, too.
But my point is, all the stuff you're describing to me are things that should break periodically. We just had a really lousy 2 years that you're going from 91,000 to 252,000?
Like I said, Village Hall is a prime example. The renovation is now, it'll be 20 years old this year. A lot of stuff is breaking down. At the water pollution, the last upgrade was finished 2005, 20 years ago. That's why, as Keith said, before the council next Wednesday, you're going to get a lot of equipment purchase requests because we have to replace a lot of broken and worn out equipment.
So, listen, we could spend all night in this, but Keith, I can tell you, and Bob, I mean, tripling this budget in 2 years, I'm just having a lot of problems with it.
I think, Ev, that you can look at this a couple different ways. One is that it's that these are really bad years, or the prior years were not so bad, and that when you have a complex as significant as ours and buildings that are older, there's going to be every year significant. I mean, they're not looking for, Rich isn't saying, give me $100,000 for stuff that breaks. It's, I need $22,000 for an HVAC system. I need $33,000 for this. These are specific line items that they're getting costs on that need to be replaced or repaired. So I think that's why we're getting such big swings in this. And I think that's beyond anyone's control. And again, that's just how I look at this. This is different than, in that line item we were looking at before where lubricants doubled or tripled. Well, we're not buying any more lubricants. We're buying the same thing that we buy every year. This is, as things break, we fix them. And if we have a good year, it's kind of like snow. If we have a good year, we don't spend that much on snow removal.
I think it's important. I think it's important to mention too that last year, we were coming off of a very difficult and challenging 2023 budget, and we had a lot of gaps to fill, right? And if you go through each of the details that I've been referring to tonight, the backup in those books, you're going to see areas that have Bob's initials. They go RGR Phase 1, RGR Phase 2. These were cuts that Bob made with my approval last year to the individual line items that make up this budget. And these department heads coming into 2025's budget are looking for to restore those line items.
It's just like what
To
happened with the
restore those
garbage.
cuts that were made to get us where we needed to be in 2024. So again, we all understand that this is, as I said earlier, a living, breathing document. We have a goal as to where we want to bring this budget in. Some of it's going to be contingent upon revenue. Some of it's going to be contingent upon cuts. But I just want to level set here that there were significant cuts made last year. And many of these requests that you're reviewing, both last week, this week, and again on the 19th, are going to be departments looking to restore some of those cuts that were made last year.
Totally, makes total sense. I just want to say, it's like a house with deferred maintenance, and I also just want to echo for people that our buildings have people in them, and we had to do the emergency appropriation here because the deferred maintenance created a dangerous situation. So, I think the summary is that this is my third budget. When we defer it 1 year, it's not going away, it's just deferred, and this is, sort of how we were when we denied Sean the garbage trucks, because we did. I still feel bad about it, but we had to. And then the next year, they're there. This is sort of catch up for this very important division. And, you know, all of these buildings have people, minus Shedler, but we're working on that, have people in them. And deferred maintenance can be a big issue when people get hurt, or like here, you know, remember when the ceiling collapsed? That was not good. And I'm sure that was deferred maintenance as well. So I just want to say thank you. Sometimes it's fascinating to me to look at how much square footage we actually are responsible to maintain. And I do feel like renovating my house now, I feel for you, and I'm grateful for all the effort. And I too would like to see it slightly lower, but the reality is whatever we take off this year is going to show back up next year. Except for Shedler, because I'm going to negotiate it into the lease when we get a
Shedler's
tenant.
a different issue, but again, I mean, these increases are unsustainable. I hear your point about deferred maintenance, and I'm all for investing, but at the end of the day, it's really easy to be Santa Claus before you got to pay the bill. And, I mean, I know there's a living, breathing document. I'm not going to agree to any significant tax increase over what we've done historically over the last year or two. So at some point, we're going to have to figure out ways to pay for all this stuff, and that's my concern.
Listen, I just want to say that at one point, you know, the roof caved in on the 3rd floor in this building. And when that was brought to my attention, we addressed it, because I'm not going to have another employee have a piece of cement fall on their head. So with all due respect, Councilman, and we will do what we do with every one of these budgets that's being presented to you. We will do our due diligence. We will weigh it out. We will determine what's absolutely necessary for these guys to function versus what might be a wish list, right? And we'll make those adjustments as we get to the end of this process. But if it is something that is a significant safety issue, I can tell you that we're gonna do everything we
Nobody's
can
asking
to
you
continue
to
to include
compromise on
that in.
safety, Keith. But again, at some point, this stuff will add up.
But Evan, you got to look at the reality of our situation, and I think we're going to go round and round. These are really old buildings. I mean, Leicester Stable is now housing a place of, it was a barn. When I was a kid, there were horses, Clydesdales, in that barn, and now no, I'm not joking, there were real horses on Maple Ave, and now it's a building, and you're using it for a different purpose, and it's beautiful and needs to be maintained, and there's dozens of people, hundreds of people, I'm going to go like literally hundreds of people in and out of there all day. It's just, you know, it kind of, without sounding, it is what it is. We have a social responsibility to the people we put and invite into these buildings to upgrade them. I mean, I don't want to increase taxes a lot either.
And listen, in fairness to Evan, Evan's just watching the money. And
We all are,
and
Paul.
No. Listen, we all are. It's a little more acute for Evan, and he watches it really carefully, and we have to make sure that he gets explanations that satisfy him, because otherwise, he's not going to support this budget. And so, you know, we need his sharp pencil on all of these things, and
Agreed.
he helps make us all more careful.
Agreed, but the reality is if we don't want to hold so many assets, we sell some of them, and I'm not suggesting that, like in any capacity, and then we provide in the operating increase. You know, the beauty of Ridgewood and so many of our departments is it's in-house, which longer term keeps the cost down. I mean, we have a significant amount of property. There's just no doubt
So
we do.
listen, 2 years, and by the way, thank you, Paul, I appreciate for stating my position probably more eloquently than I was. But I remember 2 years ago having to sit right there and tell people, like the ones sitting here, that we were going to have to furlough them. I'm not having that conversation again. That's why I'm being difficult.
And you won't.
All right.
And you're not, and wait, and you're not being difficult. You're just, you have a sharper pencil. And with that, let's move on, because I think we've covered this. And just so you know, after traffic and signal, we're going to take a 15-minute break, because we've been here for a long time. So,
Well, you got to finish Chris up. He has engineering too, so.
no, and he's also got zoning and planning. So that's what I'm saying. We have to stop some, because otherwise we're not going to stop till 8 o'clock. Yeah. No.
All right, the next one would be the other department that Rich oversees, which is traffic and signal. Staff there are the ones that do a lot of the building maintenance. We're very proud of the staff that they can do a lot of the HVAC repairs and
I'm sorry,
installations.
what tab is this?
Traffic signal.
Where is it? Oh, traffic, gotcha.
They do a lot of the work in-house because the guys have developed a good skill set, rather than have to call a contractor for every HVAC unit that breaks down. They also, maintain our traffic signals. But they maintain our signage. The village has, as some police officers have been very happy to tell me, way too many signs. We do have a couple residents that like to send us pictures of faded signs, so we try to replace them to stay current. That's an ongoing issue.
So my biggest question is, look, I've always said that signal guys can fix everything, so how come you can't fix all the other stuff that's in the prior budget so that, Evan's happy so that we don't have to go out and get it done? I mean, you guys are, come on, you're really good at this, so.
We'll do our best.
I know you do.
So 15%, another 140 grand, all right?
Which line item?
So I'm looking at the bottom line, right? We're going up versus appropriations, right? 15%, which is about $140,000 with my back of the napkin math, right?
I don't know, again,
Actually,
looking,
only about 100,000, I take it back.
comparing it to end of '24.
I'm looking at modified 2024 budget appropriations was 680,000. You're asking for 786 this year, so about 100,000 more, 15%, right?
We did have an increase in salary and wages that was long overdue for the guys.
Mhm.
That was negotiated with Keith, and I think they're happy.
Yeah, we had a number of title changes in this division. As Chris alluded to, you have an exceptionally talented staff here, and there are a number of people who are extremely valuable. Their skill set, I mean, Rich can walk you through how, the money that they saved on replacing HVAC units on municipal buildings that we would have had to probably pay double on a private contractor to do. So there were some structural things within this department that I made the conscious decision I thought were justified and right, especially for retention purposes. And they also have a significant impact on revenue that we collect from other municipal agencies. I mentioned earlier tonight that we're going to be entering into a formal shared services agreement that we'll discuss Wednesday with Hohokus. We have a similar arrangement with Midland Park, with Glen Rock. Rich does a lot of work for other places, so there is a value on the revenue that this division brings in as well. I can tell you that just by looking at this on the, and we've gone through this budget multiple times, but on the operating expenses side, there are some restorative cuts in here. You can see that from where we were in 2023 in comparison to what's being requested this year. So there's some modifications on that. And then, Rich, if you could specifically discuss 064, which is the sign and supply, the signs and sign supplies, and the additional emphasis that's been put in that space.
Sign materials are going up like all other materials and commodities. Ink, film, aluminum. We don't buy signs pre-made. We buy bare aluminum. We buy the film, and we have the plotter or the printer, whichever type of sign you want, and we manufacture the signs custom made. So it looks like more money up front that you're putting in to buy these, but if you had the signs, the amount of signs Ridgewood has, you go out and buy the pre-made signs, like other municipalities on our borders do, that number would be a lot higher than that 54. So we're putting out more signs now than we ever have. We did a lot of sign changes when Valley Hospital moved out, a lot of sign changes when a parking garage was built and had to direct people to signs. So there are so many more signs that we make now than we made 5 years ago. And they have to be maintained, replaced, upgraded. We had a serious sign theft 2 years ago and last year. Street signs just went missing. That's expensive. We have upgraded and stepped up our game. We now go to a vandal-proof, theft-proof type of sign, square channel, not round, and through bolts on the sign plates so the sign plates can't be stolen. We'll see this year if we have better luck. And those new theft-proof signs are less expensive than the older style that we used. So signs is most of what we do. And we also do bring in revenue. We do make signs for some of our bordering towns when they need a custom-made sign. So,
And there was $8,000 cut from that budget last year.
And Rich,
Those 64.
you have to mention it, or I will. We launched last year in a very limited assigned prevention with the high schoolers. So not only did they secure the ones that we put in, but we sold 64 signs, so people could take them to college, and hopefully that would be, I'm going to say half of them probably would have taken them, and that reduced it, and we're going to go bigger with that this year. And that was great, and it's good for the school, it's good for fundraising, and it's good for theft prevention.
Questions? Rich, thank you so much, and you'll forgive us, we're going to take a brief
Can we just,
break.
we need to do capital, Mayor.
Oh,
That's a quick one.
So under traffic signal, we have a request here, which, again, this is something that is a work in progress, but Rich, do you quickly want to explain to the council the dialogue that we're having with the two vendors regarding the communication upgrades for not only Ridgewood, but also for Glen Rock?
Sure. So our original radio system that supports from Central Dispatch, co-owned by Ridgewood and Glen Rock, we started to talk about this last year, and this is the year that we're going to actually make the upgrade. The original system was put in 1994. It was upgraded in 2012, and it's time again to upgrade the system and redo the system for our police officers and firefighters and ambulance corps people who use the radios, the portables that are on their shoulders, and the radios that are in their cars. It's the most used system by all of our emergency service personnel. They need to talk to each other and back to the dispatch center.
So this
it's
would cover the entire village?
cover the entire village.
So
we're
I
not
think,
gonna-
I think what's important is that there are two quotes that are being discussed from two different vendors. One is about $1.2 million, one's about $1.4 million, with some requests that have been recently been made by Rich and the public safety leadership in both Ridgewood and Glen Rock to refine some of those quotes. So this is very much a work in progress. This is essentially a placeholder number. Keep in mind, this would not all be on the backs of Ridgewood. This would be on, split in some capacity with Glen Rock. So we're in discussions. I've talked to Lenora Benjamin, who's the business administrator in Glen Rock. We talk almost weekly about this topic. Rich is still in discussion with the vendors and with the public safety teams. So this is a work in progress, but again, I think we talked about it last year, as far back as our 2024 capital budget, that there was going to need to be an emphasis in 2025 on communications and also on the water pollution control facility, which we were able to adopt the ordinance last year and get those improvements underway. The second piece, Rich, is the pedestrian crossings, which I know Councilman Mortimer requested be included for consideration in this year's capital budget. You want to just talk a little bit about that?
Sure, those are the
Would you mind if we
wire-
went back to the communications piece real quick? So can we show this then at only half? Like, what do we got to show the full amount if we think we're not going to be on the hook for the full amount?
Because I don't have the apportionment yet with Glen Rock. So again, work in progress. I'll have a better idea by the time we introduce the capital budget,
Right.
to get your full blessing. This is a placeholder number, but that is the lower estimate of the total cost of the entire
before, right?
project. Yes.
And again, we won't see a line item for communications upgrade from police, fire, EMS, because it's all going to be right here.
Yeah, and that's something that we have to refine as well, because we have requests from OEM, fire, and mainly police for new portable radios.
Right.
The plan is to bundle that into this, right? So let's say it's 12.5, and we split it with Glen Rock. I mean, spitballing this, but 600,000 each. We may have to build some money back in for the portable radio piece.
So that makes me
again,
feel a lot better.
it's a work in progress. I put it in here because I think it's important for you to know that this is coming down the pike and that this is not an inexpensive price tag. But we will refine those numbers, and as we prepare the capital budget, you'll have a better number before introduction.
this is what you mean when you say this is a living, breathing document. It is, the 1.25 million is living and breathing as we speak.
Correct.
And all communications, I think the whole council is interested in the idea, especially with first responders, of the encryption part of it.
That is part of the proposal.
Okay,
That the-
and so
we would
that's-
we were
that's in
we would
here?
move to work off an encrypted system. I know Chief Lyons has had a number of conversations with the chief in Paramus, who just recently moved to encryption, and he's learning more about that, and I know that's a priority for Rich as well.
That's excellent.
Anybody else?
Nope.
Well, you were going to talk about the pedestrian crossings?
Yeah, pedestrian crossings, the push buttons at the crosswalks. We work with the police department, traffic safety division. They tell us where they think the best spots are for pedestrian safety around the schools and uptown.
How many does 34,000 get?
It will get you 2 intersections. So, and that's at 2 intersections, you figure that's 2 crosswalks, one on each side. So it depends upon, it really depends upon the intersection, is that exactly how much money you're going to spend. Some need more lights, some need less lights, so.
Thank you.
Everybody good? Good. Rich, thank you so much. We're going to take a short break.
Thanks.
We are reconvening. Roll call?
Roll call. Councilmember Mortimer?
Here.
Deputy Mayor Perrin?
Here.
Councilmember Whites? Here. Councilmember Winograd?
Here.
And Mayor Vagianos.
Here. And so, Chris, thank you so much for your patience. We will now go to your 3 other departments. Where do you want to start?
Let's start off with the easier ones. Easier ones, but not cheaper ones. Board of Adjustment?
Yes, zoning board.
Yeah, I don't know if you folks have heard yet, but a second applicant that had appeared before the board has now filed. That would be Outfront Media.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So we don't know how that's going to proceed.
So you're talking about legal fees?
Yes.
Yeah, that, to me, legal fees are going to be the huge unknown for the zoning board.
So we currently have one active appeal with the zoning board ruling, and another was filed just last week.
Yes.
So we are working through what our legal budget needs to be in order to defend the Board of Adjustment's position on both of those issues.
We also, if the board decides on one other applicant that has had an objector attorney, we don't know if it's going to go to litigation also.
Chris, excuse me one second. It's BLDZ.
Yep.
The tab is BLDZ.
There.
I'm sorry, Chris, continue.
Yeah, zoning board may come to a decision on an applicant this year. That applicant has an objector attorney involved, so we don't know. That's why it says on the line, maybe less than, that's the applicant. So we don't know how that's going to go either. That may also go to litigation.
So we are in conversation with legal counsel who represents the Board of Adjustment to try to get the best guess as to what our legal costs might be. Obviously, they are going to be higher this year than they have been in prior year due to these appeals. But we will be finalizing a number, and, we'll present that to you as we finalize what we think the number should be.
Right. That was foreseeable.
Sure.
We had a, even though they Outfront lost by a unanimous zoning board, it was anticipated that they were going to file an appeal. So,
Other than that, there's not a lot of significant change here.
good.
Then we have the planning board. Currently, things at the planning board are a little bit slow. So continuing our cost-saving measures from last year, we do not hold a meeting unless we have some real business to discuss. For example, tomorrow night's meeting has been canceled. We shall see if the second meeting for February has any applications coming before the board. If not, again, meeting's canceled.
Not a lot being spent there.
Though I would like to do training on some of those off nights that we don't have an applicant, because we're going to have 3 new people on the board.
Well, the 3 new people are going to have to take the stormwater seminar. That's a mandatory from the DEP. And there is a seminar that's usually put out by the local bar association for new board members. I don't know when the last time it was given, but that's also, I don't know if it's a requirement, but it is very well worth it. I've taken it myself.
And do we pay for that?
We have to pay the application fee for that. The stormwater seminar for the DEP, that's a freebie.
Okay.
The other professional services, why is that up so much?
Excuse me?
Other professional services, why is that one up so much?
So if I may, Chris, so there were actually some adjustments made to that since the binders were generated because of the affordable housing piece.
Okay.
When Bob and Olivia initially prepared the first budget with Chris, we made some adjustments to accommodate that mandate. However, subsequently, we're going to charge all of Beth McManus's fees to the Affordable Housing Trust Fund. So that will be extracted. Some of that number will go down because we're going to extract those fees from from this proposed budget, which is permissible. I think it's up to 20% we can do. Yeah, so on administrative costs.
Good.
All right.
Okay.
Other questions? Engineering.
No change in staffing for engineering. There is overtime. It's a bigger jump than we had last year.
Chris, can you talk about some of those overtime initiatives in engineering? I think it's worthy for the council and the public to understand some of the overtime obligations that your staff has.
One of the biggest overtime generators and drivers right now is trees. Engineering got tasked with the issuance of tree permits, also with the sidewalks. One of our staff members, Peter, often has to spend hours at a single sidewalk location dealing with the trees, whether we do a round out, whether we can save the tree. He's usually joined by our village arborist. That's a real driver of time usage. And then there's a tree ordinance that you folks have introduced that may increase the demand on us in engineering in administrating it.
I thought Declan was.
What's that?
I thought Declan was in parks.
Yeah, he's in parks, but the permits are issued by our office. The tree companies come into us. We issue violations if we catch people doing the work without a permit.
A huge amount of the enforcement has fallen in engineering. So like when we have a neighbor-on-neighborhood situation and they ask us, the permits are all pulled through them, and then Chris has to deal with it to see if the replacement's been done.
And anything that's adjacent to a sidewalk, there's an engineering inspection as well.
And the private tree property.
No, and I want to thank you. All the times I've called in to say, hey, they're cutting a tree on such and such a street, do they have a permit? And you've run right out there. So I really appreciate it.
That takes time away from other tasks. The trees are one issue. Another issue is there has been a request to address intersection site obstructions. I had court 2 weeks ago. I had 16 cases on the docket. We're grinding our way through that right now. That also takes a tremendous amount of time.
So what's going on with the full-time salary and wages? Have we added a bunch of people because you've doubled this since 2023? Thank you, Paul. I was just saying, what is going on with the full-time salary and wages? You're doubling since 2023.
We didn't add anybody. We had, there will be salary increases for the staff due to the white-collar collective bargaining agreement.
Is there a typo? Because it says, and maybe I'm misreading it, but it says 2024 budget appropriation 289, 2025
No,
budget proposed?
That's, so again, if you go to line 01Z, there are budget credits. So many of the tasks that are assigned to the engineering department are funded through capital. So,
Thank you.
So there's a budget offset, for example,
Yep.
road resurfacing, sidewalk development.
yep.
Any of those projects, the engineering piece is charged to the capital rather than to the operating budget.
Understood completely.
But you're still a sizable chunk, right? Even taking that into account, last year we budgeted 233,000. This year you're budgeting 304. So you're still up 30%. So I'm assuming we're hiring more people?
Wait, hold on. Are you in Z1, Because we're on salary and wages.
Total salary and wages, yes.
Yeah.
Modified 2024 budget appropriations,
But
233.
Right, but actual was 339. We got to go from the actual. So it was 233, but 2024 was 339, and their budget request is lower at 304.
Total salaries and wages for 2024 was 696, 869 for the department. This year it's proposed to be 719, 137.
Right, but we have a credit, so the actual spend.
Well,
Right.
where the money comes to fund that 719 is divided between the operating budget and offset by some of the capital budget credits.
But the request this year and demonstrated is actually $30,000 lower than the actual from last year when you factor in the credits. It's lower. Yes?
when you factor in the credits.
40, actually.
There's a greater budget credit given to us in '25 than was considered in '24.
Yep. Yep.
So did we hire more people?
Nope.
So, again, all right, maybe it's getting late, I'm still not following. But total salary and wages, modified 2024 budget, 233,000, which is all the money minus the credits, right? It's 589 minus 406, right? Total was 233, so that takes into account the credits. This year, that same number is 304, so we're going up like $75,000-ish.
From appropriations, but actual demonstration was 339, which means we're going down.
No, actual was 229. So we
Not
spent
with
a
the
little less.
credits.
I mean, but again, the modified, the appropriate, what we appropriated last year was 233, now we're appropriating 304.
I think that the distinction, and Keith, correct me if I'm wrong, is the amount of the budget credit from year to year, that that fluctuates far more than the actual salaries. Is that accurate, Bob?
Which I haven't done for '25 yet. This is where I think we're going to be, to tell me what percentage of time they put on each one of these capital projects. So I then take their department, I allocate the time, and I generate the credit. So what you're seeing is, in the modified section, the $406,000, that's most likely where we wound up as far as what the credits are. The 381 on the actual most likely means that there's a journal entry missing yet, because remember, I haven't closed out. I still got work that I'm doing. So that 381 could be even a little bit higher than the 406. But that's the delta is the capital item that we charge.
Right, because the salaries are pretty static.
Yes.
Correct?
That one?
Mayor, give us 1 second.
Yes.
Sure.
That's a forced number.
Okay, so I think that there's an issue with the formula on this. So if you go on the summary page, modified 2024 budget appropriations, you have 589,706.
Right.
If you go to the next page, the next physical page, for Siobhan, it's engineer 2025. And you look at the total, the grand total for full-time salary for 2024, it's actually 696,864. If you see that?
So there's something.
That 696 should be in that 589 field.
Okay,
That's where there's a disconnect here.
okay, that makes more.
So unless Olivia had a reason, and again, she had to excuse herself, but unless she had a reason to generate that 589, that number should be 696, and that should answer the question.
Yeah, because I'm looking at the actual,
Yeah.
the far right is 712, and the proposed for 2025 is 719. So that's about as static as it
Yeah,
gets.
the actual salary increases from 24 to 25 go from 696 to 719.
All right, so
Right.
that makes sense, so that's you didn't hire an extra body, it's.
No.
Right.
It's just
No, there's no
issue.
extra body, and the summary of, I think one person hits steps, the rest of it
Right,
is
so that
cost of
explains
living
the-
increases. That's all summarized on the engineer 25 page.
It's the amount of the credits that they still need to flesh out.
Right.
But that's where the distinction comes in. So, yeah, we haven't hired more people, we haven't given them giant raises or anything like that.
Right.
Okay?
Okay,
Anybody else?
nope.
No, I just want to say with the credits, thank you, because clearly our capital plan for us politically is very reliant on you guys, and I really appreciate that. So it's in operating, but these are long-term things that are good for the whole village, but very good for us, so thank you.
So if we could just move to capital. Moving from the bottom up, the 350,000 is the soil testing and archaeological bond ordinance that we did in '24, but credited to '25's capital budget for Shedler. So that's already been approved and appropriated. Paving, we're moving it from 2 million to 2,250,000. A lot of that has to do with police protection on these road jobs. So Chris, if you want to speak to that, I know you and Bob have had extensive conversations about that.
Keith, you're absolutely correct. When we pave on our streets, we usually need traffic control officers. We try to use officers from our police department because they know our residents best. It's unfortunate, but nothing has the credibility of a uniformed, armed police officer telling somebody, no, you cannot drive down that road because we're paving it. You could have all the flaggers in the world waving all the flags they want, they'll get ignored, and we've seen it all too often. What we are able to do, working with Bob in finance, is the cost of those officers is charged to the capital account. When we run out of village officers, we use officers from surrounding communities. When there was a lot of work going on in the village, like last summer, we had officers coming here from as far away as the Palisades Interstate Park Police. So,
Good. Questions?
So, and then, Mayor, the final one is for the pedestrian tunnel. We know that some of the estimates on this project are somewhere around $1 million. We're not asking for complete funding for that because we really want to aggressively pursue both Bergen County Historic Trust money and New Jersey Historic Trust money. However, I can tell you that in speaking with Millennium Strategies, and Carol's done a lot of research in this area. She sits on that committee with Jeannie Johnson and the folks who want to bring the artistic element to this project. We need to have some pen on paper skin in the game in order to be competitive in these grant applications. So I would almost encourage the council to view this, whatever number it ends up being, and the number on the table right now is $500,000. But I would almost look at this as like a sinking fund, to the same way that we approach Maple Field turf and the fire apparatus, where if we did put this on the books and we did fund this, we wouldn't spend it immediately, but it would make our grant applications to both the county and the state much more competitive. And that's one of the main reasons that we want to include this as a recommendation for the capital budget for 2025.
So I have no issue with this line item. Remind me, when we got that presentation, I think it was Millennium Strategies, how much did they think it was going to take to do the work?
Well, actually, Conley and Hickey did the original
sorry,
study
that was
on
the one I
that,
was thinking, right.
and it was just south of $1 million,
said-
and that's for the structural piece. That's without the
right.
artistic element. So this, if you want to compare it to something similar to the lighting project, right, that we sort of celebrated last Wednesday, this would be, some money from the council on the capital side.
And then
it would
do the
would
rest
hopefully
of it.
be state and county grants, and then you would have the fundraising element with Jeannie Johnson and
great.
her
That's
committee
great.
to bring
That
that
makes all
aspect to
sense.
it. So again, this is not a break the ground 2025 project, but I do think that we need to show the state and the county that we have some skin in the game on this.
So I agree with everything. I have no issue with this. I would like to see some other bids, though, besides Connolly and Higley. I was a little underwhelmed by their presentation. This has to get done in the next, year or two. It's like an eyesore. Certainly, if there's structural issues, that's got to get fixed, too. But I'd be interested in seeing some competing.
And the one thing I do want to mention is, Chris and I had a conversation just last week, being that we're not moving to go out to bid on this project, we don't have all the funding, and this is going to be a multi-year task. We do want to get that repair made on the east side where the car struck the brick wall there. So Chris is working towards getting that done, sooner rather than later. And then as this project evolves, we'll be working on the aesthetics and some of the structural issues that are shored up in the pedestrian tunnel.
And I echo Evan's desire to get someone in addition to Connolly and Hickey to bid on this.
And we will, as we get further into this project, we'll look at other professional service providers.
Yep, good. Other questions?
the only other budget I have is utilities, if you want to go over that.
Yes, please.
Utilities, telephone, street lighting, bulk water. Well, bulk water has gone up because of the additional charges to deal
I'm
with
sorry,
the
what-
PFAS.
Utilities, and it's under
It's
utilities.
utility and
On the
bulk
left.
water budget.
Are we in operations or?
Oh, is that-
Operating.
Got
UTIL,
it.
it's, yeah.
Go ahead, Chris. Go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, bulk water has gone up because we have to pay the PFAS charges to help fund the PFAS treatment plants. The only unknown is diesel fuel and gasoline. Last year, diesel fuel and gasoline behaved in terms of prices. I have no idea what this year will bring us, given the way Washington is going, so it's a bit of an unknown.
Roll the dice.
Unfortunately, with the taxpayers' money, yes.
And listen, it's, some things are out of our control.
That's absolutely correct.
We need X number of gallons a year.
Yes,
Whatever they cost, we still need the same amount.
pretty much so, Mayor.
Yep.
The one advantage we do have is we're about 98%, 99% done with the new fuel tank installation. That is a big sigh of relief for me because the previous tanks were just a couple years over their life expectancy. Thank goodness those tanks did not leak. However, we did find an old fuel tank that did leak. So we're going through the process of cleaning that up right now. We had an expensive bill to get rid of the contaminated material. The groundwater monitoring well was just installed about a week or two ago. Look forward to see what those results will be.
Good. Questions? We are good, Chris. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chris.
Appreciate your late night here. Welcome, everyone.
So tonight, we're gonna try to be as quick as we can and save as much time as we can for your questions. I'm gonna give a quick introduction, a little bit about a couple minutes, and then Mike's gonna go into a presentation. The presentation's necessary to put this on the record, not just for this meeting, but for the 4 communities we serve and the 61,000 customers throughout the 4 towns. And then certainly we'll entertain any questions you have along the way or at the end regarding the details of the budget. With me tonight, you all know Joe Fasano, Senior Engineer for Water Utility, Michael Kors, Business Manager for the utility. Ridgewood Water consists of 46 active employees. We currently have 1 vacancy, it makes 47. In addition to that, the village provides essential services to the utility, including the village manager's office, finance department led by the CFO, engineering department that we just heard from, fleet services, signal, and many others that provide services to the utility. Ridgewood Water continues to grow to meet state and federal regulations. We're doing all that while balancing improvements to an over 100-year-old system and a very old infrastructure. Regulation-wise, we have 3 major compliance buckets: PFAS, lead service lines, and the Water Quality Accountability Act. And these are 3 of the largest regulatory actions that have happened in the drinking water sector in the last 3 decades. Now, why do I say that? Because these 3 things are driving this budget. PFAS, as we all know, 12 new plants have to be constructed, 2 are already in service, 6 are under construction. We expect 4 of those 6 completed this year, and the final 4 will break ground this year, getting us well on our way to completing all the projects by the end of 2026. In addition to that, we're constructing miles of rural water mains to connect 21 satellite wells to those PFAS treatment plants. That is well underway with 9,500 feet of pipe in the ground of the 52,000 feet total, and the 3rd of 4 contracts is breaking ground this March. Lead service lines, to date, we have replaced close to 800 utility-side lead service lines and coordinated work with about 200 customers on the private side. And this year, we will go out to bid for the first 4-town contract that will allow us to start the lead service line program to help fund private and public services to the properties within the 4 systems. Water Quality Accountability Act-wise, we are redrafting the utilities asset management plan that allows us to keep track of all our assets and the maintenance of those assets. We're continuing with our water main replacement plan, where we expect to replace close to 4 miles of main in 2025. We will complete an American Water Works Association water loss audit and are looking to contract for leak detection services starting with the intermediate zone, mostly in Midland Park, this spring and into the summer. We are near completion on a revised hydraulic model of our system. They'll help us tune how the system will be operated after centralization with the 12 new plants, with a focus on how to better distribute water while maintaining disinfection, pressure, and other water quality standards throughout the system. We have completed the evaluation of the intermediate zone pressure issues that happened this fall and have drafted an improvement plan that we'll be sharing very soon, with the highest priority of being able to construct a new pump station on West Glen Avenue. The pump and parts have been ordered, some have been delivered already and are being stored at our car facility, and 50% of the work that's required in West Glen Avenue is already completed by our staff. Our DEP permit is under review, and we expect to get some response on that very soon. In this full regard, we have drafted plans also to enforce irrigation in the entire system to a level that we've never done before, thanks to the cooperation of all 4 municipalities, and are seeking out firms to assist with messaging to our customers, not just on this topic, but on PFAS and how the water system operates in this world of regulation today. The 2025 budget that we're about to present wraps all this up, and it's a $25 million proposal. Mike will get into the details of it, and they'll answer any questions that you have.
Thanks, Rich.
Thank you, Rich. I know it's been a long night for all of you, so I'll dispense with my normal pleasantries and just get started with the bottom line up front. This year, we are proposing our 2025 budget in the amount of $25,123,197. $19 million of which will go to support our 2025 operating needs, and $6 million, a little under $6 million, will cover our current debt service. Overall, this represents about a 7.5% increase over our 2024 budget, though keep in mind, 5.5% of that is related to that debt service, while 2% is related to our operational increases that are coming this year. While debt service is a more direct calculation, our operation expenses and decreases and increases that can occur across the many budget lines and spreadsheet columns are a bit more complex. This slide gives a bit of a breakdown of some of those factors that have contributed to this increase in our operations budget. I'm happy to elaborate on each one of these, but I thought for time's sake I just mentioned one or two, and then move on if you have any questions towards the end. There are 2 main items up there, one of which is an example of our increases, where you see about $255,000 coming to us with the rising costs of our employee benefit program. On contrast, you might see our laboratory expenses, where last year we invested in our laboratory's capacities and are starting to see the fruit of that labor. I want to thank our chemist, Almar Burgos, for taking the time to not only work toward the certification of our lab, for previously outsourced volatile organic compound testing, but also for finding areas that we can safely reduce our annual lab budget while still being prepared for emergency situations. I want to take a moment to emphasize our 2025 past due account collections program. The last time we performed collections was back in 2015-2016. It is not only a time-consuming process, but also very labor-intensive, usually falling on the backs of our overstretched meters in our markout division. With the collection restrictions related delays associated with the pandemic, we found our past due accounts to have reached over 1.7 million. Therefore, it's becoming a bit of a priority. Our senior management assistant, Justin Popek, came up with a great solution to manage the challenges of the growing accounts and the limitations on our staff. He recognized that our billing software firm, Cubes, manufactured by Computel LLC, has collection services in its product line. With that in mind, we launched a small pilot study at the end of 2024, using 9 accounts as a control group, and had almost perfect success. Out of the 9 accounts, all 9 customers either paid in full or entered a deferred payment plan to pay through their quarterly bills. This equated to about $15,000 in immediate income, with another $39,000 still being collected through the deferred payment plans. We proposed this bill last year, this program last year, with a not to exceed of about $53,000. This chart helps break down our operating budget into a couple distinct categories and shows how much of each category is dedicated towards our PFAS treatment master plan. A couple of points to emphasize when looking at this chart. Some new guidance and state statutes have meant that we can no longer separate certain expenses on our funding applications. Thus, this slide showcases how the environment around PFAS rules and regulations is an ever-changing landscape. Thus, salaries and wages and statutory and deferred expenses do not have that PFAS separation. I'd also like to point out that our debt service, which represents the amount of debt we have to pay each year, amount of debt down, you can see how nearly half of our 2025 debt service is related to that PFAS treatment master plan. This particular graph is breaking these categories down a little bit further, separating items like taxes and source and supply from our other expenses line item. As you can see, the majority of our budget is within 3 specific areas: our salaries and wages at 22%, our operational expenses at 24%, and our debt service at 20%. We also have source and supply coming in at a distant fourth. Touching briefly on some of our capital improvement budget, our general capital budget is keeping to an annual milestone of around $5 million. The vast majority is focusing on upgrading our aging infrastructure and our distribution system. The other 3 areas are smaller portions, focus on including some things like vehicles to support our growing staff, facility improvements, and upgrades to our well houses in preparation for this PFAS treatment centralization. The last few slides focus on our expenses. The remaining will focus on our net revenue stream. In order to meet that $25,123,197 budget, we calculate our revenue stream through 3 main areas: our water rents, our miscellaneous income in areas such as cell tower rents, in-house services, hydrant services, and increases to our water rents that are associated with proposed rates we'll be discussing in a few slides. I want to point out our water rent is a value that is, by statute, cannot exceed the previous years. That's why we separate out some of the increases in our proposed rates at the bottom. Then we evaluate how much of our surplus will be needed to meet those operating expenses we calculated. This year, we are anticipating a need to use $4,389,773 from our surplus accounts. This slide represents a visual representation and percentage base of our revenue sources. The pie chart to the left breaks down the revenue streams I mentioned on the previous chart. The pie chart to the right is breaking out our largest income stream, our water rents. Our water rents are a summation of our fixed, our facilities and our PFAS charges, as well as our variable volume and usage charges. It's important to keep in mind that 66% of our water rent revenue comes from variable charges, which can be influenced by such unpredictable factors such as weather. Our 2025 proposed rates have been calculated based upon our increasing revenue requirements and the increased income needed to meet our budget, as well as ensure we are not overextending our surplus. This chart gives a breakdown of our 2025 rate proposal. It is broken down first by meter size, which has 7 distinct categories, as well as into 2 fixed charges, our facilities charge and our PFAS surcharge. Then at the bottom, you'll see our volumetric rate is listed. To better understand how the proposed rate will affect the average user, we created this bar graph. These are the annual costs associated with our most common meter size, the 5/8 inch meter, and based upon the average monthly consumption of about 70,000 gallons per month. So this represents the most typical average customer. The 2024 average annual cost is on the left bar, and the proposed 2025 rates are shown on the right bar. In the center is the New Jersey state average. Overall, our rate proposal is going to show an increase to about $80 to the average user's bill, which equates to about 11.5% over our 2024 bills. Our rate consultant, Raftella, spent some time researching comparable systems and put together the following chart to see how our rates compare to similar systems around the state. The two yellow bars are the Ridgewood Water annual bill estimates. The yellow bar to the left represents our 2024 rates, and the yellow bar to the right represents the 2025 proposed rates. It's important to keep in mind, too, that most of the comparable systems are based upon the 2024 rates, as we won't know what their 2025 proposals could be. I see Deputy Mayor is looking closely. I'll leave this up for a moment.
Does this include the PFAS fee? This is all completely out of pocket?
Yes.
Okay. And also, I assume some of these other water utilities haven't even started their PFAS remediation that you, of course, are several years into.
Many of which. In fact, I believe some of the larger ones haven't even started that treatment and are years away from it, as most of them are surface water. For the public's benefit, I want to speak about some of our next budget steps. After tonight's meeting, there will be mostly 4 additional steps leading up to the final council approval. This budget presentation and rate review will be published to our website on and about February 21st. On March 5th, the Village Council will hold a second work session to discuss our 2025 proposed rates. Then the budget and rate ordinance will be introduced in a public session on March 12th. And finally, on April 9th, the final reading of the Ridgewood Water budget and rate ordinance will be conducted in preparation for the Village Council's vote. Each year, Ridgewood Water hires a financial consultant to review our budget and to provide recommendations. For the second year, we have contracted Raftelis Financial Consultants to perform this review. That final summary memo will be available upon completion of our website, on our website at water.ridgewoodnj.net. With that, thank you very much for your time, and we'll be happy to field any questions.
Questions?
Just a comment, this is by and far the best presentation I've seen in my 2.5 years here, 2 years plus. I'm obviously not happy with the idea of a 11% increase, but I think the justifications here are pretty so strong and solid. And I can hope in a couple of years when the PFAS remediation is completed, we can maybe look at some relief for our people. But this seems, I can't believe I'm about to say that an 11% increase seems reasonable, but an 11% rate seems to be reasonable.
Thank you very much for the kind words about the presentation, and we share in your sentiment.
Who are you, and what have you done with Councilmember Weitz?
I mean, they're not looking for $60,000 for the lubricant, I guess, but still.
And I think it's important. Rich, what year was the consent order signed?
2023.
So I think it's important to put in perspective that, the planning for the PFAS piece, for the lead piece, and now for the distribution piece. The distribution is a little more discretionary, right, than the PFAS and the lead piece, but necessary nonetheless. I think it's just important to know that, when the commitment was made to invest $150 million into building these PFAS treatment facilities, again, DEP consent order, required to comply with this mandate, there was going to be a price tag associated with that. And I think it's important to put that into perspective. What I can tell you is that I need to commend Rich and his team at Ridgewood Water, because this is not something that they take lightly. The potential for rate increases to pay for these enormous infrastructure improvements are significant, and they spend a significant amount of their day and their week trying to figure out how to help offset the burden that's going to be placed on the customer throughout the service area. And from, working through the legal system to try to get these folks who, did this to the water, and the ongoing litigation concerning these manufacturers. There's a lot of effort put into that to try to recuperate funds to offset these costs, in addition to the fact that, we're constantly aggressively trying to seek federal money. We have money for Ravine, which is the PFAS treatment facility that's being built over on Goffel Road near the Hawthorne border. $2 million through the efforts of Congressman Gottheimer in that regard. And, we've made a number of requests now to the state legislature, talking to all three legislative teams, because there are 9 legislators total that represent the customers within the Ridgewood Water service area. But now we're especially talking to the folks in Glen Rock about continuing to pursue some state funding to offset these costs. So I just think that's important to point out in this context. We're looking at rate increases. That's not a secret. But we are also aggressively pursuing ways to reduce that burden on the customers who are serviced by Ridgewood Water. So to Mike and Jill and especially Rich, kudos to you and your entire team over there for that continued effort.
And I want to take a moment just to point out, I've had several conversations with Rich Calby. Water infrastructure is not cheap and needs to be maintained and replaced year after year after year. And if you skip a year, you're going to pay for it later. And it's probably, like some of the other things we've discussed tonight, going to be more expensive. And in the short term, when you're trying to save money, you can do this in any given year because nobody sees it. And that water main that lasts 12 years, probably going to make it to 13 or 14. I believe, Rich, you told me that there was 0 infrastructure improvement from 2000 to 2015. These are facts. $0 were spent where we're supposed to be spending money every single year. And so that chicken has come home to roost, and we are paying for it now. And I will tell you one thing, this council will never, ever skip a year in terms of its maintenance. But to go for 15 years and to keep that place together with tape and Band-Aids, and now we're going to fix it. Old business that's going to be taken care of now. Thank you all. Really appreciate your time. Anybody have any other questions?
I just want to say that always proud of Ridgewood Water, the presentation, and I'm hoping the next significant rate hike we see is for tiered pricing, because then that would be everyone's most favorite rate hike, because it would have the duality of, reducing and eliminating, and it would be better overall. So I know I've mentioned it. It might be my mantra for 2025, and I think Pam's going to join me. Yep. But thank you. It really is something I'm always forever proud of, that you guys have done this and dug us out of a very serious hole.
Thank you. And tier pricing has been something on our list for many years. We decided that we needed to get past PFAS first, and once that's complete, that we could then move forward a proposal for that. So it's coming soon.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
And have a good evening.
Thanks.
Thank you, Rich. Okay, we're going to pivot to the village clerk's budget. And also, Heather will present the elections budget for 2025 as well.
Welcome, Ms. Mailander.
Thank you. All right, so we'll start with village clerk.
Sure.
Overall, there's a modest decrease, I believe.
I'm sorry, say that one more time?
Well, it says point 16, no?
Decrease, right?
Yes.
Thank you.
I
just like hearing
believe
that.
if I'm correct.
All right.
Mr.
there you
Rooney,
go.
please correct me if I'm incorrect. We have a newer deputy village clerk, so she is going through the classes for her RMC, which is a certification. And she's making less than the previous deputy who was here for many years. We have hired from within. We also did a hire from within to replace that person who was working in the municipal clerk's office and is now in the deputy position. And I did interviews Friday to replace the part-time receptionist in the morning, and I'll be making that decision probably this week. And hopefully that person will be on board within the next couple weeks. So that's salaries and wages. Do you have any specific questions about particular?
So other professional services went up pretty?
Okay, so that's the preparation of the meeting minutes. We have not been billed for the first quarter of 2024 yet for the minutes that were prepared. And so that included the regular meetings as well as budget meetings. So we're waiting for those invoices to come in to pay them. So I've reached out to the vendor, and hopefully that will be rectified soon. So what you're seeing, what we actually spent, it's not the total amount, because we have a full quarter's worth of invoices we haven't yet paid.
Yeah, but I was looking, so 6,300 is what we appropriated, though, for 2024, right?
I'm sorry, say it again?
Sorry, 6,300 was what we appropriated for 2024, correct?
Yeah.
And now we're looking to appropriate 12,000.
Right, just because I don't know how many meetings you're going to have. It's all based on the meetings you have, how long they are.
You're
So,
saying it's cheaper to do shorter meetings?
correct.
Okay.
So the less you speak, the
Evan, if you
cheaper
go
it'll
to-
be.
If you go to tab,
Take that under advisement.
See, finding money
Take it or
savings.
leave it.
Just
if
gotta
you
be
go to
more-
tab 28, you'll see where I reduced that last year. That's
Okay, so that's a placeholder. Listen, it's not a lot of money, so I'm not going to complain, but hopefully that comes down if me and my colleagues can speak less. All right.
Sure. Any other questions on that?
I think we're good.
Okay.
Yep.
So election, you're going to elections now?
Yep.
Okay.
Please.
So elections, the money that we pay out in salaries and wages is for election day itself. So myself, my deputy, and those who help us with the delivery of the packages to the polling locations, as well as in the evening when all of them come back to check them and then take them to Hackensack, are paid to do so. In addition, I mean, it's a minimal 3.68% increase. We did have an increase this past year in 2024 for our primary election expenses. We did question it, and it was reduced, but we never know what it's going to be.
So, sorry, I think maybe there's another mistake here, because, so last year we appropriated 49,000, this year we're appropriating 43, so we're down, aren't we? It's just showing here as an increase.
I'm going to leave it to them.
Yeah, so it says we appropriated $49,000 last year, and we're appropriating 43 with the ask.
43.1,
Yes, isn't
correct.
that down?
No, I got you.
Trying to get more credit for Heather here.
Yeah, 41.7.
Total budget line. Anyway, it's not worth spending, it's not a lot of money, so, but I'm just wondering if there's some mistakes in the logic.
Increase. Yeah, I think the 33,770 might have come down to 29 or something. I think it was like maybe 30. That was the primary election cost, so.
Yeah, I'm just saying it should be reflected that
Yeah.
you're decreasing, not increasing.
Right, no, I understand.
Yeah.
The pretty much flat.
Either way, no other questions for me. I'm just looking
Good.
at the numbers, not the percentages, and
Sure,
the numbers look
right.
very, very
No,
good.
Yeah, you're right.
Everybody else good?
Yeah,
go.
I just had one question.
Sure.
I mean, with early voting, how soon do you think Ridgewood's going to see a reduction in polling locations and poll workers?
But we already have a reduction in poll workers because they're all in one now. Like, in other words, when you used to go to Willard School, it's 3 districts. You used to have poll workers for each district. Now they're all one big district with the new machines. So you've already reduced the number of poll workers. Whether or not we can further consolidate, we need room for all those machines. And they're big, like especially those scanners and those BMDs also, which are the actual voting machines. So I don't know. And it's something we can look into, and it has to do with the county too, because the county Board of Elections has to come out, they have to send inspectors, they have to make sure that we have the proper number of outlets, the proper number of, the proper amount of space to accommodate all those voters. And although we don't have a 70% turnout, which probably in person was maybe, let's guess, 60%, 55%, you know, they were in person, the others were mail-in or early voting. We do get a fairly good turnout usually, unless there's no contest. So I don't know the answer to that. And I don't think the county is looking to do it this year, certainly, because it's got gubernatorial elections. So, you know, maybe in the next 2 years after that, they may consider doing it. But I don't know that it's going to happen that soon.
Anybody else? I think we're good.
Thanks,
Thank
Heather.
you. Have a lovely evening. Yeah.
No, you gotta go back up there, actually, I think.
Keith, I think the rest of this is yours.
Yeah, so we'll move to the manager's budget. Full-time salary, that's the 3 full-timers in my office, myself included. And actually, that number is, there was a COLA built into there that's not applicable, so that number's actually going to come down by about $4,000 in the request. Part-time, that's our senior bus driver. And then you'll see 01Z, those are the budget credits to be offset salary from Bridgewood Water and other places. With regard to the increases proposed under 028, we have this is primarily relative to the background checks that we need to conduct within the village. That is the biggest expense for new employees, and that's a line item of about $12,000. And then we also have built in there some education performance appraisals in there as well. Those are the 2 highlights on that one. Going back to it, senior transportation, our spend last year was not as much as what we're asking, but in discussion with at least 2 of the village council members, there seems to be an interest in expanding transportation opportunities, especially for our senior population. So we're working through and actually going to launch later this month a survey into the senior community with the assistance of Sheila Brogan and Beth Abbott from Age Friendly to sort of assess exactly what the needs are within the senior community for expanding those transportation opportunities. So that's something that we will be able to refine and report on as we get into the second quarter of the year. Any other questions on that? Otherwise, we can move to the council budget.
Everybody good?
Yep.
Let's go.
I think we should say good job. Good job, Keith.
What'd I do? No. All right. Boot up here. Okay. So with regard to the council budget, we're not talking about really any significant change here. The request last year was, or the appropriation last year was 96,140. This year it's 96,950.
I don't see any questions here.
Okay.
Let's go.
Move to the village attorney's budget. Okay. So here, we have the annual retainer that's appropriated for the village attorney. Down below, and these numbers, I want to stress, are also a work in progress. Labor attorney expenses, we budgeted last year 53. We're bringing that down to 50. Litigation, 150. You want to talk about that as a restorative cut, 046?
So we have potential claims, which in our discussion with Matt Rogers, is what the potential would be out there for things that he's aware of that are still a work in progress. And we do have one for sanitation, which is a result of one of our vehicles rear-ending another vehicle at a stop sign. And that that's our deductible as it relates to that claim. So that's still moving forward. That may go up just a little bit for attorney's fees, but right now we're talking about the deductible for that one.
The giant increase in litigation, I know you just touched on that, but that's a pretty significant increase. What are we looking at?
That's our deductible on a pending case, and Matt's making the recommendation to put that in after consulting our insurance company.
That's just a placeholder. We're not going to spend that unless we need to, right?
I
think we're going to spend. Sounds like we're spending.
I think that's the number that he needs to.
This individual's been through several surgeries already, and all those claims haven't been filed.
Got it.
So that comes with Matt's recommendation. So if we want to
but
talk,
that's-
if we
but
want to
that's a
talk
real-
offline and closed, we can certainly do that.
That's a hard number based upon a specific instance, and
Right.
that's not for legal fees. That's for
Settlement.
Right. amount.
And again, like that's one of those things, that's a this year expense
Got it.
that would come off the books in 26 if that's where we actually land.
Got it.
Prosecutor is steady. Union negotiations, we had initially proposed $25,000 in that line item. I made that adjustment in light of the fact that we have settled both white and blue collar. Just waiting for the union to get back to us on ratification on that, so I'm hopeful there. We will go into PBA negotiations this calendar year. However, I think a $10,000 line item for union negotiations with regard to our labor attorney will be sufficient. And miscellaneous, we've actually reduced that line item by $5,000 for this year.
There's nothing here for public defender? Is that somewhere else?
It's a separate line item. We did that when Erica Will was here for her, but for municipal court. Yeah. So, any questions about that?
Anybody else? We're good.
All right, Mayor, that's all we have for tonight. The two main departments that we'll hear from on the 19th are going to be the Ridgewood Police Department. We rescheduled Chief Lyons because he was under the weather from the first session, and also we'll hear from Parks and Recreation. Obviously, we had a loss of an employee in that department, so that was rescheduled to the 19th as well. And then we'll have hopefully a recommendation on final capital and the overall tax rate when we meet on February 27th. That's what we have.
Good. Let's go back to public comment. Seeing no one in the audience. Dylan, do we have anybody online? Nobody. So we will close. We've got one. Let's go.
All right.
As I wrote,
That's a shame. Okay. Then let's close public comment and entertain a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
Second.
All in
All
favor?
in favor?
Aye.
Let's go. Turn your mics off, guys.